Good evening, and welcome back to the Sleepy History channel. Tonight, we're not just reading history, we're peering through the veils of time into a realm where quiet influence and inner strength quietly shaped the world. We'll be exploring the fascinating world of the most influential women in medieval history, uncovering stories that time almost forgot. Before we begin, may I take a quiet moment to reach out to you? Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Whether it's late in the evening or the start of a new day, I'm truly grateful to share a few calm minutes of your time. I always look forward to reading your comments. Hearing where you are and how these stories reach you truly inspires me. Your words often become the spark that shapes the next episode. If you're enjoying these gentle journeys through history, feel free to subscribe or share your ideas for future topics. Your voice helps keep this little corner of history alive and this community growing. So now, get comfortable, settle in, and let the quiet echoes of medieval Europe carry you away. Our journey begins where remarkable women stepped beyond expectation and left their mark upon a changing world. Now, let's begin. The medieval period, often referred to as the Middle Ages, lasted from the 5th to the 15th century AD in Europe. It was a time of great change, conflict, and cultural development, marked by the rise and fall of empires, the spread of Christianity, and the emergence of new ideas and artistic traditions. While men held most positions of power during this era, there were also extraordinary women who defied societal limitations to leave their mark on history. Some ruled as queens and empresses, while others made significant contributions to religion, literature, and the arts. In this documentary, we'll explore the lives and legacies of several of these fascinating female figures. Our journey begins in the early medieval period with Empress Theodora of the Byzantine Empire. Born into a humble family in Constantinople around the year 500 AD, Theodora began her career as an actress and courtesan. In a remarkable twist of fate, she caught the eye of Justinian, a rising political star who would later become emperor. Despite her controversial past, Justinian was captivated by Theodora's intelligence, wit, and beauty. He married her in 525 AD, and when he ascended to the throne a few years later, Theodora became empress. As Justinian's partner in both life and governance, Theodora wielded significant influence over the empire. She played a key role in helping her husband navigate political crises and military campaigns. During the Nika riots of 532 AD, when angry mobs threatened to overthrow Justinian, it was Theodora who convinced him to stand his ground and assert his authority. Her courage and decisive action helped save his reign. Theodora also used her position to champion the rights of women and the downtrodden. She persuaded Justinian to pass laws that expanded women's property rights, gave mothers greater custody over their children, and prohibited the trafficking of young girls. She established a convent called the Metanoia to provide refuge and rehabilitation for former prostitutes. Theodora's legacy as a protector of women's interests was remembered long after her death in 548 AD. As we move further into the early medieval period, we encounter another influential woman of faith, Hilda of Whitby. Born into the Deiryn royal family around 614 AD in what is now northern England, Hilda entered the monastic life as a teenager and rose to become one of the most important abbesses of her time. In 657 AD, she founded a monastery at Whitby on the coast of Northumbria. Under her leadership, Whitby became renowned as a centre of learning, attracting scholars and students from all over Britain and and beyond. Hilda was known for her wisdom, diplomacy, and spiritual guidance. Kings and bishops sought her counsel on matters of church and state. In 664 AD, she hosted the famous Synod of Whitby at her abbey. This pivotal meeting brought together leaders of the Roman and Celtic Christian traditions to resolve disputes over the calculation of Easter and other religious observances. Hilda's role in facilitating this conference helped pave the way for the unity and growth of the early English Church. Hilda was also a mentor to many notable religious figures, including Cædmon, the earliest known English poet. According to legend, Cædmon was an illiterate cowherd who received the gift of poetic composition from God after Hilda encouraged him to join the monastery. Under her tutelage, he went on to create beautiful hymns and verses that are still remembered today. Hilda's influence as an educator and spiritual leader continued until her death in 680 AD. As we journey into the High Middle Ages, we encounter one of the most powerful and fascinating women of the 12th century, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Born around 1122 AD, Eleanor was the eldest daughter of William X, the Duke of Aquitaine, a wealthy and culturally sophisticated region in what is now southern France. As a young woman, she inherited her father's duchy, making her one of the most sought-after brides in Europe. In 1137, at the age of 15, Eleanor married Louis VII, the King of France. Their union brought Aquitaine under the French crown and made Eleanor queen. However, the marriage was troubled from the start. Eleanor was a strong-willed and independent woman who chafed at the constraints of court life and the pious, monastic lifestyle favored by Louis. The couple also failed to produce a male heir, which put a strain on their relationship. Despite these difficulties, Eleanor made her mark as Queen of France. She was a patron of the arts, particularly the troubadour poets of her native Aquitaine, and helped foster a renaissance of courtly love and chivalry. In 1147, she accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade to the Holy Land, leading a contingent of her own soldiers. Although the crusade was a military failure, Eleanor's presence on the battlefield was a testament to her courage and determination. Upon their return to France, Eleanor and Louis's marriage deteriorated further. In 1152, they obtained an annulment on the grounds of consanguinity. Just 8 weeks later, Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet, the young Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou. 2 years later, when Henry ascended to the throne of England, Eleanor became queen once again. As Queen of England, Eleanor continued to wield significant political influence. She served as regent when Henry was away on military campaigns and played a key role in governing their vast territories, which stretched from the Scottish borders to the Pyrenees. She also bore Henry 8 children, including 5 sons, 2 of whom would become kings of England. However, Eleanor's relationship with Henry was no less tumultuous than her marriage to Louis had been. Henry was a ruthless and controlling ruler who resented Eleanor's independence and political maneuvering. In 1173, Eleanor supported a rebellion against Henry by their eldest son, also named Henry. When the revolt failed, the king had Eleanor imprisoned for treason. She would remain under house arrest for the next 16 years. Eleanor outlived Henry and finally regained her freedom upon his death in 1189. In her final years, she continued to be a force in politics, helping to secure the succession of her favourite son, Richard the Lionheart, and later serving as regent for her youngest son, King John. Eleanor died in 1204 at the age of 82, having left an indelible mark on the history of France, England, and the medieval world as a whole. As we move further into the High Middle Ages, we encounter another powerful royal woman who challenged the gender norms of her time. Empress Matilda. Born in 1102, Matilda was the daughter of King Henry I of England and his queen, Matilda of Scotland. As a young girl, she was sent to Germany to be educated and later married the Holy Roman Emperor Henry V. When her husband died in 1125, Matilda returned to England as a widow, still in her early 20s. King Henry I's only legitimate son, William Adelin, had died in a shipwreck in 1120, leaving the English succession uncertain. To secure the throne for his bloodline, Henry named Matilda as his heir and made his barons swear fealty to her. This was a highly unusual move in a time when women were not considered suitable rulers in their own right. However, when Henry I died in 1135, Matilda faced significant opposition from her cousin Stephen of Blois, who also claimed the throne. Many of the English barons who had sworn allegiance to Matilda now sided with Stephen, who was a popular military leader and had the support of the church. Matilda refused to back down, and the result was a long and bloody civil war known as the Anarchy. For nearly 2 decades, Matilda and Stephen battled for control of England. Matilda had the support of her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, and her uncle, King David I of Scotland. She also formed an alliance with Geoffrey of Anjou, whom she married in 1128. Matilda and her supporters achieved several notable victories, including the capture of Stephen at the Battle of Lincoln in 1141. For a brief period, Matilda was recognized as Lady of the English and came close to being crowned queen. However, Matilda's arrogance and lack of political savvy alienated many of her potential supporters. She was forced to flee London in the face of a popular uprising and was never able to consolidate her rule. The war dragged on inconclusively until 1153, when Matilda's son Henry reached an agreement with Stephen. Under the terms of the Treaty of Wallingford, Stephen would remain king for the rest of his life, but Henry would succeed him upon his death. Although Matilda was ultimately unsuccessful in her bid for the English throne, her tenacity and determination were remarkable for a woman of her time. She refused to accept the limitations placed on her gender and fought fiercely for what she believed was her rightful inheritance. Her struggle also paved the way for the Plantagenet dynasty that would rule England for more than 3 centuries, beginning with her son Henry II. As we move into the later Middle Ages, we encounter a young woman whose brief but extraordinary life continues to captivate people to this day, Joan of Arc. Born around 1412 in the village of Domremy in northeastern France, Joan was the daughter of prosperous peasant farmers. From a young age, she experienced vivid religious visions and heard voices that she believed were divine messages from God. At the time of Joan's birth, France was in the midst of the 100 Years' War, a prolonged conflict with England over control of the French throne. The English had occupied much of northern France, including the city of Paris, and the French king, Charles VII, was more of a figurehead than a true ruler. Joan became convinced that God had chosen her to help Charles defeat the English and reclaim his kingdom. In 1428, at the age of 16, Joan left her home and sought an audience with Charles at his court in Chinon. Despite initial skepticism from the royal advisors, Charles was impressed by Joan's piety and determination. He agreed to give her a small army and allowed her to accompany his troops to the besieged city of Orléans. Joan's arrival at Orléans in April 1429 electrified the French forces. Clad in white armor and carrying a banner bearing the names of Jesus and Mary, she led the troops in a series of daring attacks on the English fortifications. Within just 9 days, the siege was lifted and the English were forced to retreat. Joan's role in this stunning victory earned her the nickname the Maid of Orléans and made her a national heroine. Emboldened by their success at Orléans, Joan and the French army went on the offensive. They won a string of victories over the English and their Burgundian allies, culminating in the triumphal entry of Charles VII into the city of Reims, where he was officially crowned King of France in July 1429. Joan stood at Charles's side during the coronation ceremony, holding her banner high. However, Joan's meteoric rise was followed by an equally swift fall. In May 1430, she was captured by the Burgundians while defending the town of Compiègne. The English, who considered Joan a dangerous sorceress and heretic, eagerly sought custody of her. In exchange for a large sum of money, the Burgundians handed Joan over to the English, who put her on trial for heresy and witchcraft. The trial, which took place in the English-controlled city of Rouen, was a sham proceeding designed to discredit Joan and the French cause. Despite being denied legal counsel and subjected to grueling interrogations, Joan remained steadfast in her faith and her belief in the righteousness of her mission. In May 1431, she was found guilty and sentenced to death. On the morning of May 30th, at the age of just 19, Joan was burned at the stake in the old marketplace of Rouen. Joan's execution only served to cement her status as a martyr and a symbol of French resistance. In the years following her death, the tide of the war began to turn in France's favor. Charles VII, who had done little to save Joan from her fate, now embraced her memory as a way to rally support for his cause. In 1456, a posthumous retrial ordered by the Pope overturned Joan's conviction and declared her an innocent victim of a politically motivated prosecution. Today, Joan of Arc is revered as a saint by the Catholic Church and a national heroine of France. Her story has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film, and her image continues to be invoked as a symbol of courage, faith, and patriotism. While the historical facts of her life are sometimes obscured by legend and mythology, there is no denying the enduring power of her example as a young woman who defied the conventions of her time and changed the course of history. As we continue our exploration of remarkable women in the later Middle Ages, we turn to the story of Margery Kempe, an English Christian mystic and author who challenged the religious and social norms of her day. Born around 1373 in the town of King's Lynn in Norfolk, Margery was the daughter of a prominent merchant family. As a young woman, she married and had 14 children, but she also experienced profound spiritual visions and felt a calling to devote her life to God. In 1413, after more than 20 years of marriage, Margery made the unusual decision to take a vow of chastity and embark on a life of prayer, penance, and pilgrimage. With her husband's grudging consent, she set out on a series of journeys that took her across England and Europe, visiting holy sites such as Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela. Margery's behavior on these pilgrimages was often controversial and unconventional. She wept loudly and copiously during religious services, attracting attention and sometimes derision from onlookers. She engaged in public acts of self-mortification, such as wearing hair shirts and walking barefoot. She also claimed to have intimate conversations with Jesus, Mary, and other saints, which some viewed as a sign of heresy or demonic possession. Despite the skepticism and hostility she faced from religious authorities and fellow pilgrims, Margery remained committed to her spiritual calling. She sought out the counsel of respected theologians and mystics, such as the anchorite Julian of Norwich, who validated her experiences and encouraged her to continue on her path. In the 1430s, near the end of her life, Margery dictated her memoirs to a scribe, creating what is now known as the Book of Margery Kempe. This extraordinary work, which was only rediscovered in the 20th century, is considered the first autobiography in the English language. In it, Margery recounts her spiritual journey, her visions and conversations with God, and her struggles to find acceptance and understanding in a world that often viewed her as a madwoman or a heretic. Margery's book is a fascinating glimpse into the inner life of a medieval woman who dared to break free from the constraints of her society and pursue her own path to divine grace. It is also a testament to the power of the written word to preserve the voices and experiences of those who might otherwise be lost to history. Although Margery Kempe was not widely known or celebrated in her own time, her legacy has grown in recent years as scholars and readers have rediscovered her work. She is now recognized as a pioneering figure in the history of women's spirituality and literature, and her book is studied as a classic of medieval mysticism and autobiography. As we move into the final chapter of our journey through the lives of influential women in the Middle Ages, we encounter two remarkable figures who made lasting contributions to the arts, sciences, and intellectual life of their time. The first of these women is Christine de Pizan, a French writer and philosopher who is often considered the first professional female author in the Western world. Born in Venice around 1364, Christine moved to Paris as a young child, when her father, a noted astrologer and physician, was appointed court astrologer to King Charles V of France. Growing up in the vibrant intellectual atmosphere of the French court, Christine received an unusually thorough education for a woman of her time. She learned to read and write in multiple languages, studied the classics of ancient literature and philosophy, and developed a keen interest in the arts and sciences. In 1380, at the age of 15, Christine married a royal secretary named Étienne du Castel. The couple had 3 children and enjoyed a happy marriage until Étienne's sudden death from the plague in 1390. Left a widow at the age of 25, Christine found herself responsible for supporting her mother, her children, and her niece. Faced with financial hardship and limited options, Christine turned to writing as a means of both personal expression and professional livelihood. Over the next 3 decades, she produced an astonishing body of work, including poetry, prose, biographies, and treatises on subjects ranging from politics and history to religion and mythology. One of Christine's most famous and influential works is The Book of the City of Ladies, a prose text published in 1405. In this book, Christine creates an allegorical city populated by famous women from history and legend, using their stories to refute misogynistic attitudes and assert the intellectual and moral equality of women. Throughout her career, Christine enjoyed the patronage and support of powerful figures such as the Duke of Burgundy and the French royal family. Her works were widely read and admired, and she was recognized as one of the foremost. As we've seen, the lives of Empress Theodora and Hilda of Whitby demonstrate how women could rise to wield great influence in the early medieval world, both within secular realms and the church. But the High Middle Ages would see the emergence of royal women who commanded even greater authority, wealth, and power on the stage of Europe. Perhaps none embodies this more than Eleanor of Aquitaine. Born around 1122 to William, Duke of Aquitaine, Eleanor inherited one of the largest and richest regions of France upon her father's death. Already renowned for her beauty, sophistication, and intellect, the young Duchess would become Queen of France at just 15 years old through her marriage to King Louis VII. For a time, Eleanor enjoyed a glamorous life at the French court, becoming a celebrated patron of the arts, music, and poetry. She's said to have inspired a renaissance of courtly love, chivalry, and troubadour culture that spread from Aquitaine across Europe. A bold and adventurous spirit, the Queen even accompanied her husband on the Second Crusade to the Holy Land in 1147, leading a contingent of her own knights and ladies on the arduous journey. However, Eleanor's strong-willed personality and meddling in politics increasingly brought her into conflict with Louis. After 15 years of a troubled marriage that failed to produce a male heir, their union was annulled in 1152 on the grounds of consanguinity. But Eleanor would not remain single for long. Just 8 weeks later, she married the young Henry Plantagenet, Count of Anjou and Duke of Normandy, who stood to become the next King of England. As Queen of England, Eleanor would reach the zenith of her power and influence. She bore Henry 8 children, including 5 sons, and was heavily involved in governing their vast territories that comprised the Angevin Empire. During her husband's frequent absences, Eleanor served as regent, skillfully managing affairs of state. She also shaped the education of her children, particularly her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart. However, Eleanor's relationship with Henry became increasingly strained over time, as she grew resentful of his attempts to limit her authority and upset over his many infidelities. A final rupture occurred in 1173 when Eleanor encouraged her sons to rebel against their father. The revolt ultimately failed, and the furious Henry had Eleanor imprisoned for the next 16 years. Yet even confinement could not contain Eleanor's indomitable spirit. Upon Henry's death in 1189, their son Richard assumed the throne and ordered his mother's release. Now in her late 60s, Eleanor would continue to wield power and influence as Queen Mother. With Richard frequently absent on the Third Crusade, she served as regent in England, working to raise his ransom when he was captured and held for a huge sum. Under the reign of her younger son John, Eleanor remained a force to be reckoned with. At the remarkable age of 80, she personally travelled to Castile to select one of her granddaughters as a bride for the French heir, in order to promote peace between England and France. The indefatigable Queen Mother died in 1204 at the Abbey of Fontevraud, having navigated the turbulent political waters of Europe for 7 decades. Eleanor of Aquitaine's extraordinary life exemplifies how noble birth, combined with intelligence, ambition, and force of personality, could allow a medieval woman to tower over her male contemporaries in influence. But she was not the only royal woman of the 12th century who sought to claim ultimate power in her own name. Decades before Eleanor was even born, another formidable woman, Empress Matilda, very nearly became the first ruling Queen of England in her own right. The daughter of King Henry I, Matilda was named as his heir after the death of her brother in the White Ship disaster of 1120. To strengthen her claim to the throne, Henry made his barons swear to accept Matilda as his successor before his own death in 1135. However, Matilda's cousin, Stephen of Blois, quickly crossed the Channel from Boulogne and seized the crown for himself with the support of the English Church and many nobles. The rival factions of Stephen and Matilda would fight a long and bloody civil war called the Anarchy that dragged on for nearly 20 years. Matilda did initially gain the upper hand and was even proclaimed Lady of the English in 1141. But her arrogant and imperious behaviour alienated many of her supporters. After she was chased out of London by an angry mob and besieged in Oxford Castle, Matilda was eventually forced to flee back to France. Though she was never able to decisively wrest the crown from Stephen, it was ultimately Matilda's son, Henry Plantagenet, who would become king as Henry II, founding England's great Angevin dynasty. The clashes between Matilda and Stephen, and later between Eleanor and Henry, reveal how royal succession and marriage were fraught battlegrounds in which medieval women had to tenaciously navigate and fight to assert their power. But as the Middle Ages progressed, women of far humbler backgrounds would also storm onto the stage of history in dramatic fashion to defy all expectations of their sex. In the early 1400s, an illiterate young peasant girl from a small village in northeast France began to experience powerful visions that she believed were messages from God. The 13-year-old Joan of Arc became convinced that she was destined to lead the French to victory in their long war against the invading English. With the support of local nobles impressed by her piety and charisma, Joan travelled to the court of Charles VII to persuade the embattled Dauphin to provide her with an army to relieve the besieged city of Orléans. Clad in white armour and wielding an ancient sword that she had unearthed from behind a church altar, the teenage Joan rode at the head of the French troops, exhorting them to crush the English. Remarkably, under her leadership, and to the amazement of French commanders, they succeeded in defeating the English and lifting the brutal siege in just 9 days. News of the miraculous victory led by the Maid of Orléans quickly spread, electrifying French resistance. Joan's stunning military successes continued as she led the French to a string of triumphs against the English along the Loire Valley in 1429. Under her banner, Charles VII was able to reach the city of Reims and be officially crowned as king in the cathedral. solidifying his previously shaky grasp on the throne. Many more flocked to Joan as her fame and reputation as a divinely guided savior grew. However, a failed attempt to capture Paris was followed by Joan's own capture by the Burgundians, French allies of the English, during a skirmish in 1430. The Burgundians handed Joan over to the English, who were eager to destroy the upstart peasant girl who had turned the tide of the war against them. In a blatantly political trial presided over by hostile clerics, Joan was charged with witchcraft and heresy for her unorthodox visions and insistence on male attire. Despite a valiant defense in which she outmaneuvered learned theologians with her sharp replies, Joan was condemned to death for her refusal to submit to church authority. The 19-year-old was publicly burned at the stake in Rouen in 1431, clutching a cross fashioned from 2 sticks as the flames consumed her. Her ashes were scattered in the Seine so that her remains could not be collected and venerated as relics by her many supporters. Joan of Arc's astonishing life turned her into an enduring symbol of French nationalism and the triumph of the ordinary over the powerful. The illiterate village girl who crowned a king and helped turn the tide of the 100 Years' War became a legendary figure, a martyr, and ultimately a saint, canonized in 1920. Joan's visions and voices also place her within a long tradition of medieval female mystics who claimed direct experience of the divine that bypassed the male church hierarchy. Her defiant embrace of unconventional dress and roles and insistence on the authority of her own spiritual revelations would find later parallels in the experiences of many religious women who followed in her footsteps. One of the most intriguing was the 15th century Englishwoman Margery Kempe. Born to a prosperous merchant family in King's Lynn around 1373, Margery initially pursued the conventional path of marriage, bearing 14 children. But a bout of what she described as madness, following the birth of her first child, kindled intense spiritual longings and visions that would lead her to break free of normal expectations for women of her class. Following a vision of Christ, Margery made the radical decision to live a chaste life, separating from her husband to devote herself fully to her faith. Undertaking multiple pilgrimages, she travelled widely across England and Europe to holy sites like Canterbury, Rome, Jerusalem, and Santiago de Compostela. Along the way, Margery records experiencing ecstatic visions, prolonged bouts of loud weeping, and even the mystical marriage to Jesus. Not content to keep her spiritual adventures to herself, Margery took to enthusiastically preaching her message in public. A woman haranguing crowds about her visions and instructing them in their faith was a deeply transgressive act in a society where the public religious sphere was entirely dominated by male clerics. Not surprisingly, Margery repeatedly ran afoul of church authorities, facing accusations of heresy and lollardy by those who were threatened by her spiritual charisma and influence. Remarkably, for an illiterate woman of her day, Margery also became the author of the oldest known autobiography in the English language. Unable to read or write herself, she dictated her life story to scribes as the Book of Margery Kempe around 1436. The work vividly records not only her intense visionary experiences, but also the lively details of her travels and trials. It opens a fascinating window into the inner world of a medieval woman who was empowered by her personal connection to the divine. While Joan of Arc and Margery Kempe found their voices through visions and spiritual callings, other women of the late Middle Ages advanced to the forefront of literary and intellectual life through the power of their pens. At a time when the vast majority of writers were men, often clerics, a handful of extraordinary women established themselves as influential thinkers and authors in their own right. Christine de Pizan, widely regarded as Europe's first professional woman writer, was foremost among them. Born in Venice around 1364, Christine moved to Paris as a young child when her father was appointed court astrologer to King Charles V. She received an unusually robust education for a girl due to her father's progressive ideas and showed an early love for reading and study. At the age of 15, Christine married and initially settled into the life of a contented wife and mother. But her scholar husband died unexpectedly a decade later, followed shortly after by the deaths of her father and the king. Suddenly left to fend for herself and her 3 young children, Christine turned to writing to support her family, an almost unheard of path for a woman of her time. Christine quickly gained renown and noble patrons for her skillful love ballads and poems commemorating the deeds of great rulers. She began moving in elevated circles, serving as a court writer for several French dukes, and maintaining a correspondence with an English earl. Her reputation spread beyond France, with copies of her works making their way to libraries in England, Burgundy, and even Spain. But Christine was more than a mere entertainer of the nobility. Her later writings reveal her as a passionately engaged thinker, determined to defend women against the rampant misogyny of her age. Works like The Book of the City of Ladies and The Treasure of the City of Ladies lambasted male writers who slandered and demeaned women. They argued forcefully for women's intellectual and moral equality, offering eloquent counterexamples of illustrious women in history. Through her corpus of some 40 works, Christine de Pizan helped to establish an important female voice in the male-dominated world of medieval letters. Her spirited defense of women's capabilities set the stage for later proto-feminist thinkers and planted the seeds of a growing movement for women's education and empowerment. Christine's remarkable success as a self-made woman writer showed that the pen could provide a powerful vehicle for women to claim authority and independence. The intellectual contributions of medieval women extended well beyond the literary sphere into fields like science, medicine, and music. And one of the most brilliant lights of learning in the 12th century was the German Benedictine abbess Hildegard of Bingen. A visionary, polymath, and composer, Hildegard was a true Renaissance woman, centuries before the Renaissance. The 10th child of a noble family, Hildegard was dedicated to the church at a young age, entering a monastery at Disi-Bodenberg at just 8 years old. She experienced mystical visions throughout her childhood, which she would record much later in several theological works. Elected abbess in 1136, Hildegard went on to found 2 of her own monasteries, where her gifts as a spiritual leader, naturalist and healer, flourished. Hildegard was a prolific correspondent, offering advice to kings, emperors, popes, and common folk alike who wrote seeking her counsel. Her letters reflect her wide-ranging interests, from matters of church reform and politics to medicine and the natural world. The abbot's extensive writings include works of theology, natural history, cosmology and medicine, as well as poetry and the earliest known morality play. But Hildegard was perhaps most remarkable for her musical compositions. One of the largest surviving bodies of 12th century music is found in her collection of 77 chants and hymns, Symphonia Harmoniae Celestium Revelationum. Hildegard's soaring, ecstatic melodies and sensual lyrics, often drawing imagery from nature, represent a unique form of medieval musical expression. Her haunting chants continue to be performed and recorded today. Renowned as the Sibyl of the Rhine, Hildegard of Bingen was sought out for her advice and respected as a philosopher and visionary far beyond the borders of Germany. Her diverse body of work reflects an incandescent intellect that was unafraid to tackle subjects ranging from the scientific to the spiritual. In many ways, she prefigured the ideal of the Renaissance man, or in this case, woman, whose thirst for knowledge could not be bounded by the dictates of medieval gender roles. As we come to the end of our journey through the lives of some of the most extraordinary women of the Middle Ages, one thing stands out above all. These trailblazing individuals repeatedly defied and subverted the constraints that their society attempted to impose on them by virtue of their sex. Whether they were born to royalty or common folk, enjoyed the benefits of wealth and education, or had to forge their own paths to empowerment, these women refused to be limited by the expectations of their age. They exercised political power in their own names led armies into battle, launched religious movements, made groundbreaking intellectual contributions, and used their gifts to shape the cultural and spiritual life of their times. In doing so, they left indelible marks on history. Of course, it must be acknowledged that women like Eleanor of Aquitaine, Joan of Arc, Christine de Pizan, and Hildegard of Bingen were very much the exceptions in medieval society. The vast majority of women, from peasants to princesses, enjoyed few rights or opportunities to participate in public life. They were valued chiefly for their domestic functions as wives and mothers, their lives dictated by fathers and husbands. Nevertheless, the stories of the remarkable women we've encountered here open a window into what medieval women could achieve when they managed to break free of society's strictures. And they are really only the tip of the iceberg. Countless more women, whose names have been lost to history, undoubtedly struggled in ways large and small to assert their agency within a patriarchal world. In celebrating the accomplishments of the most famous and influential medieval women, we should also honor the unsung heroines, the forgotten multitudes whose quiet acts of resistance paved the way for later generations to fulfill their true potential. As we've seen, the Middle Ages was not quite as dark for women as we often imagine. Formidable queens, abbesses, mystics, and scholars managed to write women back into the pages of history through their own force of will. Yet we are also left wondering how many more women of talent were denied the opportunities to leave their mark on the world due to the rigid gender norms of their time. One of the lessons of surveying influential medieval women is that genius, ambition, and leadership know no boundaries of sex. Given an opening, women have risen to wield power and shape the course of events in every age. So while the lives of women like Eleanor of Aquitaine and Joan of Arc may seem far removed from our own time, they offer strikingly modern examples of barrier-breaking women who sought to fulfill their destinies on their own terms. They encourages us to see past the surface of societies defined by male domination, to glimpse the vital ways in which women have always struggled to claim their equal place in the human story. In that, they are as relevant today as ever. We hope you've enjoyed this tour through the lives of some of the most fascinating women of the medieval world. With any luck, you are drifting off to sleep with visions of powerful abbesses, warrior maidens, and brilliant poets dancing through your head. The Middle Ages may seem like a distant and foreign country, but the stories of its most influential women remind us of the timeless power of passion, faith, and determination to change the world. Until next time, sweet dreams. As we've seen, the medieval period was a time of great change and upheaval, with shifting power dynamics, religious conflicts, and cultural transformations that would shape the course of European history. Against this backdrop, it's all the more remarkable that so many women were able to rise to positions of influence and leave their mark on the world. One such woman was Matilda of Tuscany, a powerful Italian noblewoman who played a key role in the political and religious struggles of the 11th century. Born into a wealthy, aristocratic family, Matilda was well educated and highly intelligent, with a keen understanding of politics and diplomacy. She inherited vast estates and castles throughout northern Italy, making her one of the most powerful landowners in the region. But Matilda's influence extended far beyond her own territories. She was a staunch ally of Pope Gregory VII, who was engaged in a bitter power struggle with the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV. Known as the investiture controversy, this conflict centered on who had the right to appoint church officials, the Pope or secular rulers. Matilda threw her considerable resources and military might behind the papal cause. In 1077, when Henry IV was forced to trek across the Alps to seek the Pope's forgiveness and have his excommunication lifted, it was Matilda who provided the emperor with shelter and mediated between him and Gregory VII. The famous meeting between the emperor and Pope took place at Matilda's castle of Canossa. Although a truce was reached, hostilities soon resumed, with Matilda leading armies in defense of the papacy. Matilda's military acumen was formidable. She personally led troops into battle and was known for her bravery and tactical skills. In an age when warfare was considered the domain of men, Matilda defied expectations and proved herself a capable commander. She also used her wealth to build strategic fortifications throughout her territories, many of which still stand today. But Matilda was more than just a warrior and political player. She was also a great patron of the arts, particularly sacred music. She commissioned beautiful illuminated manuscripts and supported the work of composers and musicians. The Exulté chant, an important hymn sung at Easter Vigil, is thought to have been written in Matilda's honor. Matilda never married or had children, instead dedicating her life to the church and her territories. When she died in 1115, she left her vast estates to the papacy, a move that would have far-reaching consequences for Italy and the church. Dante, in his Divine Comedy, placed Matilda in the earthly paradise of purgatory, where she prepares souls for their final ascent to heaven. Matilda of Tuscany's story is a testament to the power and influence that some women were able to wield in the medieval world, even in the face of entrenched patriarchal attitudes. Through her military prowess, political savvy, and patronage of the arts, Matilda helped shape the course of European history and left an indelible mark on the church and the culture of her time. As we move on to our next influential figure, let's pause and reflect on the enduring legacy of women like Matilda. In a time when women were often seen as little more than property or pawns in political alliances, these remarkable individuals managed to carve out their own paths and make their voices heard. They remind us that throughout history, women have always found ways to resist, to lead, and to leave their mark on the world. Our next story takes us to the Iberian Peninsula in the 15th century, where a young woman named Isabella of Castile would rise to become one of the most powerful monarchs in European history. Born into the royal family of Castile in 1451, Isabella faced many challenges on her path to the throne. Her half-brother Henry IV occupied the crown, and there were rumours that his heir, Joanna, was illegitimate. Isabella had to navigate a treacherous political landscape, forging alliances and fending off rivals to secure her position. In 1469, Isabella made a fateful decision that would change the course of history. She married Ferdinand of Aragon, heir to the throne of the neighbouring kingdom. Their marriage united the two largest kingdoms in Spain and laid the foundation for a powerful new state. Isabella and Ferdinand ruled together as joint sovereigns, a rare arrangement for the time. As queen, Isabella proved to be a formidable ruler. She was intelligent, decisive, and politically astute. Together with Ferdinand, she worked to consolidate royal power and unify Spain under their rule. This meant curbing the influence of the nobility, reforming the legal system, and centralizing authority in the monarchy. One of Isabella's most significant achievements was the completion of the Reconquista, the centuries-long campaign to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. In 1492, Isabella and Ferdinand's armies captured the city of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain. This victory was hailed as a triumph for Christendom and cemented Isabella's reputation as a defender of the faith. But Isabella's legacy is not without controversy. She was a devout Catholic and saw it as her duty to uphold religious uniformity in her realms. In 1478, Isabella and Ferdinand established the Spanish Inquisition, a brutal campaign to root out heresy and enforce orthodoxy. Jews and Muslims were ordered to convert to Christianity or face expulsion from Spain. Thousands were subjected to torture, imprisonment, and execution. Isabella was also a key patron of Christopher Columbus and his voyages to the New World. Columbus's journeys, made possible by Isabella's support, would open up the Americas to Spanish conquest and colonization, with devastating consequences for indigenous peoples. The flow of gold and silver from the New World into Spanish coffers would make Spain a dominant power in Europe for centuries to come. Despite these dark chapters, Isabella of Castile is remembered as one of the most influential and consequential monarchs of the Middle Ages. Her reign saw the rise of Spain as a major European power, the completion of the Reconquista, and the beginning of the Age of Exploration. She governed with skill and determination, leaving an indelible mark on Spanish history. Isabella's story reminds us of the complex legacy of powerful women in history. She was a product of her time, and her actions must be understood in the context of the world she inhabited. Yet her influence endures to this day, a testament to the enduring fascination we have with the lives and deeds of the great women who shaped the medieval world. As we've journeyed through the Middle Ages, we've encountered women who ruled empires, led armies, shaped culture, and challenged the limitations placed on their gender. From the Byzantine Empire to the Iberian Peninsula, from the cloisters of English abbeys to the battlefields of France, these remarkable women left their mark on history. We began with Empress Theodora, the actress turned empress who helped her husband Justinian rule the Byzantine Empire and who used her influence to expand women's rights. We met Hilda of Whitby, the wise abbess, sought out by kings and bishops, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, the queen who presided over courts of love and helped spur a renaissance in arts and learning. We heard the story of Matilda, the empress who fought for the English crown, and of Joan of Arc, the peasant girl turned military visionary. We learned of Marjorie Kempe, whose spiritual autobiographical writings challenged the church, and of Christine de Pizan, whose works defended women and fostered a female literary tradition. We marveled at the polymathic genius of Hildegard of Bingen, and the political and military prowess of Matilda of Tuscany. And we grappled with the complex legacy of Isabella of Castile, the queen who unified Spain, completed the Reconquista, and set the stage for a global empire. Throughout these stories, a common thread emerges: the unshakable determination of women to make their voices heard and their presence felt, despite the constraints of a patriarchal society. These women were pioneers, trailblazers who defied expectations and convention to shape the course of history. Yet, as remarkable as their individual stories are, it's important to remember that they represent only a small fraction of the women who lived and worked in the medieval world. For every Theodora or Isabella, there were countless other women, peasants and nobles, nuns and merchants, artists and healers, whose stories have been lost to history. In recent decades, historians have worked to uncover and amplify these forgotten voices. Through painstaking research and creative scholarship, they have shed light on the everyday experiences of medieval women, their work, their families, their spirituality, their struggles and their triumphs. What emerges is a picture of a world that was more complex and varied than we often imagine. While medieval society was undoubtedly patriarchal, with entrenched gender hierarchies and limitations on women's agency, it was also a world in which women found ways to carve out spaces of influence and autonomy. In the cloisters of convents and abbeys, women created communities of learning and devotion. In the marketplaces and guild halls of towns and cities, women worked as artisans and merchants, managing households and businesses. And in the courts and palaces of the nobility, women wielded influence as advisors, patrons, and cultural tastemakers. Of course, the opportunities available to women varied greatly depending on their social class and circumstances. Noble women had access to education and resources that were denied to their lower-class sisters. Yet even among the peasantry, women played vital roles in the economy and society, working alongside men in the fields and the home. As we come to the end of our journey through the lives of influential medieval women, let us take a moment to reflect on their legacy. These women remind us that even in the face of tremendous obstacles, individuals have the power to shape the course of history. They inspire us to think critically about the ways in which gender has shaped our past and continues to shape our present. But perhaps most importantly, they invite us to keep digging, to keep uncovering the stories of the women who came before us. For every famous queen or abbess, there are countless other women waiting to be rediscovered and celebrated. So let us continue to explore the rich and complex history of the Middle Ages and the role that women played in shaping it. Let us honor the legacy of the remarkable individuals we've met on this journey, and let us commit ourselves to amplifying the voices of women past and present. As we drift off to sleep, let us carry with us the stories of these medieval women, their courage, their resilience, their unshakable determination to make their mark on the world. May their example inspire us to greatness in our own lives, and may their memory live on for generations to come. Good night, and sweet dreams of a world shaped by the power and wisdom of women. As we've seen, women like Empress Theodora and Hilda of Whitby played crucial roles in the early medieval period. But as the Middle Ages progressed, an increasing number of royal and aristocratic women found ways to wield significant political influence, even in a world dominated by men. One of the most fascinating and powerful of these women was Eleanor of Aquitaine. Born in 1122 or 1124, Eleanor was the eldest daughter of William X, the Duke of Aquitaine and Count of Poitiers. As the heir to one of the largest and wealthiest domains in France, she was a highly desirable bride. In 1137, at just 15 years old, Eleanor married King Louis VII of France, becoming Queen of the Franks. Though young, Eleanor quickly established herself as a force to be reckoned with. Beautiful, intelligent, and strong-willed, she often clashed with her pious and rather dull husband. Unlike many royal wives of the time who were little more than decorative consorts, Eleanor was actively involved in governing the kingdom, particularly in her native Aquitaine. In 1147, Eleanor accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade to the Holy Land. Though the crusade itself achieved little, Eleanor's presence caused quite a stir. Rumours spread of an affair between the Queen and her uncle, Raymond of Poitiers. True or not, the stories highlighted Eleanor's boldness and disregard for convention. The strains of the crusade took their toll on Eleanor and Louis's already troubled marriage. The final straw came in 1152, when after 15 years of union, they had still not produced a male heir for the French throne. The marriage was annulled on grounds of consanguinity, as the two were distant cousins. But Eleanor was not one to let divorce diminish her power or prospects. Just 8 weeks after the annulment, she married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou. 2 years later, when Henry succeeded to the English throne as Henry II, Eleanor became Queen of England. Over the next decade and a half, Eleanor would give birth to 8 children, including 5 sons. She was an active mother, closely involved in her children's upbringing and education. At the same time, she maintained her own power base, especially in Aquitaine, which she continued to rule as an independent fiefdom. However, Eleanor's relationship with Henry, like that with Louis, was tumultuous. Henry was notoriously unfaithful, fathering several illegitimate children. He also sought to curb Eleanor's influence and even imprisoned her for a time, after she supported their son's rebellion against him. Yet even confinement could not contain Eleanor's indomitable spirit. After Henry's death in 1189, she re-emerged to become a valued advisor to their sons Richard and John, the new kings of England. She continued to wield power well into her 70s, a remarkable feat for a woman of her time. Beyond her political machinations, Eleanor left a profound cultural legacy. Her court at Poitiers became a renowned centre of troubadour culture, helping to spread the ideals of courtly love and chivalry. She patronised arts and literature, and may have even commissioned the famous Court of Love, where knights and ladies debated romantic dilemmas. Eleanor of Aquitaine's extraordinary life exemplifies how a few exceptional women could rise above the constraints of their era to leave an indelible mark on history. But she was far from the only royal woman of the Middle Ages to defy expectations and challenge the status quo. Another example is Empress Matilda, born in 1102 as the daughter of King Henry I of England. When Henry died in 1135, without any other legitimate children, he had named Matilda as his heir. But in a world where the rule of women was still unthinkable to most, the barons balked at accepting her. Instead, they threw their support behind Matilda's cousin Stephen of Blois, who quickly seized the throne. Matilda, however, refused to accept this usurpation of what she saw as her rightful inheritance. With the backing of her husband, Geoffrey of Anjou, she launched a campaign to oust Stephen and claim the crown. What followed was a period of prolonged civil war known as the Anarchy. For almost 20 years, Matilda and Stephen vied for control of England in a conflict marked by shifting alliances, betrayals, and sporadic violence. Though she enjoyed some significant victories, even briefly taking control of London, Matilda was never able to decisively vanquish her rival. In the end, a compromise was reached whereby Stephen would remain king, but Matilda's son Henry would succeed him. Though she failed in her ultimate aim of becoming Queen Regnant, Matilda's fierce battle for what she believed was her birthright demonstrated that women could be just as tenacious and ambitious as any man. Throughout the 12th century, as Matilda fought for the English crown and Eleanor of Aquitaine governed a vast swath of France, other women were also finding ways to make their mark, often in the face of daunting odds. As the later Middle Ages dawned, the stage was set for an increasing number of women to challenge gender norms and expectations. Some, like Joan of Arc in the 15th century, would do so through remarkable feats of military prowess and spiritual conviction. Others, like the mystic Marjorie Kempe and the writer Christine de Pizan, would blaze new trails in the realms of religion and literature. But before we turn to their stories, we should pause to consider the broader context in which these women lived and struggled. The High and Late Middle Ages were a time of tremendous change and upheaval in Europe. The Crusades, though largely driven by men, had exposed Europeans to new lands, peoples, and ideas. They had also destabilized old certainties and created new opportunities for social mobility. The growth of towns and trade was eroding the foundations of the feudal system. The rise of universities was fostering new learning and intellectual ferment. And the Black Death of the 14th century had decimated the population, upending traditional labor and power structures. In this fluid and shifting landscape, some women were able to seize unprecedented opportunities and challenge long-standing constraints. They did so not only through individual acts of courage or defiance, but also by working within and sometimes subverting the institutions and ideologies of their time. For example, the medieval church, while deeply patriarchal, also offered women certain avenues for influence and autonomy. Convents and monasteries provided spaces where women could pursue learning, practice spirituality, and even wield authority as abbesses. Female saints and mystics, though often viewed with suspicion by church authorities, could also gain popular followings and shape religious discourse. Similarly, the courtly culture of the later Middle Ages, with its emphasis on chivalry and romantic love, afforded some elite women a measure of power and prestige. As patrons of the arts, leaders of salons, and objects of chivalric devotion, noble women could shape the cultural life of their time, even as they remained largely excluded from formal political power. Of course, for the vast majority of medieval women, life remained a constant struggle against poverty, disease, and the strictures of a deeply unequal society. Peasant women labored in the fields alongside their husbands, birthed and buried children at a staggering rate, and enjoyed few legal or social protections. In towns and cities, women worked as servants, artisans, and prostitutes, often living on the margins of respectable society. Yet even among the lower classes, some exceptional women managed to make their voices heard. Marjorie Kempe, for instance, was a middle-class housewife from the English town of King's Lynn. Born around 1373, she married at 20 and bore 14 children. But after the birth of her first child, Marjorie experienced a spiritual crisis that would transform her life. Believing that she had been called by God to live a life of devotion, Marjorie embarked on a series of pilgrimages to holy sites around Europe and the Middle East. She claimed to have visions of Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and engaged in public displays of weeping and ecstatic prayer that often disconcerted those around her. Marjorie's unorthodox behavior and assertions of spiritual authority brought her into conflict with both secular and religious authorities. She was accused of heresy, threatened with burning, and frequently chastised by clergy, who saw her as a disruptive influence. Yet Marjorie persisted in her unconventional quest for holiness. In later life, she dictated an account of her experiences to a scribe, creating what is often considered the first autobiography in the English language. Though not published until centuries after her death, Marjorie's book offers a rare glimpse into the inner life of a medieval woman, grappling with questions of faith, identity, and self-expression. Like Marjorie Kempe, Christine de Pizan was another woman who dared to make her voice heard in a world that often sought to silence female voices. Born in Venice around 1364, Christine grew up at the court of King Charles V of France, where her father served as the royal astrologer and physician. Unusually for a girl of her time, Christine received a robust education, learning Latin, philosophy, and literature. In 1379, at the age of 15, she married a royal secretary named Étienne de Castel. The couple had 3 children and enjoyed a happy marriage until Étienne's sudden death in 1389. Left a widow at 25, Christine found herself in a precarious position. With no male protector and limited financial resources, she faced an uncertain future in a society that offered few options for women in her situation. But rather than remarrying or entering a convent, Christine made the daring decision to support herself and her family through her writing. Over the next 3 decades, Christine would produce an astonishing body of work, including poetry, prose, and political and philosophical treatises. She attracted the patronage of powerful nobles like the Duke of Burgundy and the Duke of Berry, who admired her learning and literary skill. But Christine was more than just a court poet or propagandist. She was also an outspoken advocate for women's rights and a fierce critic of misogyny. In works like the Book of the City of Ladies and the Treasure of the City of Ladies, she challenged the pervasive anti-feminist attitudes of her day and celebrated the accomplishments of notable women throughout history. Christine's defense of women was all the more remarkable given the deeply ingrained sexism of medieval culture. Many male writers and thinkers of the time saw women as inherently inferior, prone to vice and temptation. They used biblical and classical texts to argue that women should be subordinate to men and confined to the domestic sphere. Christine boldly refuted these notions, arguing that women were just as capable of virtue, learning, and leadership as men. She pointed to examples of female saints, scholars, and rulers to prove her case. And she urged women to cultivate their minds and talents, rather than accepting the limiting roles imposed on them by society. In many ways, Christine de Pizan was a woman ahead of her time. Her calls for gender equality and female empowerment would not be out of place in a modern feminist manifesto. Yet she was also very much a product of her medieval context, deeply influenced by the chivalric ideals and courtly culture of her day. Like other exceptional women of the Middle Ages, Christine had to navigate a complex and often contradictory social landscape. She benefited from the patronage and protection of powerful men, even as she challenged the misogynistic attitudes of many of her male contemporaries. She worked within the conventions of courtly literature, while subtly subverting them to advance her own views. Christine's legacy, like that of so many medieval women, is one of resilience, adaptability, and quiet subversion. She may not have overturned the patriarchal order of her time, but she opened up new possibilities for women's voices to be heard and taken seriously. As the Middle Ages drew to a close in the 15th and early 16th centuries, other remarkable women would follow in the footsteps of trailblazers like Eleanor of Aquitaine, Marjorie Kempe, and Christine de Pizan. Some, like Isabella Fleur of Castile and Elizabeth I of England, would rule as queens in their own right, demonstrating that women could wield political power at the highest levels. Others, like the artist Sophonisba Anguissola and the poet Louise l'Abeille, would excel in fields traditionally dominated by men, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible for women in the arts and letters, and still others, like the Catholic reformer Teresa of Avila and the Protestant martyr Anne Askew, would challenge religious orthodoxies and claim new forms of spiritual authority for women. Of course, these exceptional figures were still very much the exceptions in a world where the vast majority of women remained confined to narrow roles and subjected to male authority. The struggle for true gender equality would continue for centuries, and in many ways remains unfinished to this day. But the stories of medieval women like those we've explored here remind us that even in the most seemingly oppressive circumstances, the human spirit has an incredible capacity for resistance, creativity, and transformation. These women may have lived in a distant and often alien past, but their examples continue to inspire and challenge us in the present. As we've journeyed through the lives and legacies of some of the most influential women of the Middle Ages, a few key themes have emerged. We've seen how women could wield power and influence in both explicit and subtle ways, as rulers, patrons, mystics, and writers. We've seen how they could challenge gender norms and expectations, even as they had to navigate the constraints of a patriarchal society. But perhaps most importantly, we've seen how the stories of medieval women are not just historical curiosities or footnotes, but vital parts of the larger human story. They remind us of the incredible diversity and complexity of the past, and of the ways in which individuals can shape the course of history, even in the face of daunting odds. Of course, our tour through the annals of medieval womanhood has been far from exhaustive. For every Eleanor of Aquitaine or Christina de Pizan, there are countless other women whose names and deeds have been lost to history. And even for those we do remember, there is always more to learn and discover. But perhaps that is part of the enduring fascination of studying the past. The more we look, the more we find, and the more we are reminded of the richness and depth of the human experience across time and place. As we conclude our journey through the lives of medieval women, it's worth reflecting on what their stories can teach us in the present day. In a world that still grapples with questions of gender inequality and social justice, the examples of women who challenged the status quo and asserted their agency in difficult times can be a source of inspiration and hope. They remind us that change is possible, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable barriers. They remind us of the power of individual action and the importance of standing up for one's beliefs. And they remind us that the fight for a more just and equitable world is an ongoing struggle, one that requires the efforts of every generation. So as we look back on the remarkable women of the Middle Ages, let us also look forward to a future in which their ideals of equality, empowerment, and human dignity are more fully realized. Let us honor their legacies by continuing the work they began and by striving to create a world in which every person, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential. The women we've met in this journey, from Empress Theodora to Marjorie Kempe to Christine de Pizan, may have lived in a very different time and place from our own. But in their courage, their creativity, and their unbending determination, they embody the best of what it means to be human. They are not just figures of the past, but beacons for the future. So let us remember them, learn from them, and carry forward their spirit of resilience and hope. For in doing so, we honor not just the influential women of medieval history, but the untapped potential in all of us to make a difference in the world. And with that, we come to the end of our exploration of the most influential women of the medieval era. I hope this journey through time has been both informative and inspiring. Though the names and stories may drift and fade as you settle into sleep, may their essence linger, a reminder of the extraordinary lives that have come before and the endless possibilities that lie ahead. For the human story is not just one of kings and conquerors, but of the countless individuals, celebrated and unsung, who have shaped our world through their vision, their valor, and their unbreakable spirit. And in that great tapestry of history, the vibrant threads of medieval womanhood will forever shine. Good night and sweet dreams of a past that is never truly past, and a future that is ours to shape. As we've seen, the life of Joan of Arc was a remarkable testament to the power of faith and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Her story captured the imagination of people across Europe, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and music in the centuries that followed. Even today, she remains an enduring symbol of French national pride and a patron saint of the country. But while Joan's military exploits and tragic martyrdom are well known, fewer people are familiar with the details of her early life and the visions that set her on the path to destiny. Born around 1412 to a peasant family in the village of Domremy, in northeastern France, Joan was by all accounts a devout and pious child. From a young age, she claimed to hear the voices of saints and angels, urging her to help the Dauphin, Charles VII, reclaim his throne from English invaders. At the time, France was embroiled in the latter stages of the 100 Years' War, a prolonged conflict with England that had left the country divided and demoralized. The English, along with their Burgundian allies, controlled much of northern France, including the capital city of Paris. Meanwhile, the Dauphin Charles, the rightful heir to the French throne, was forced to hold court in the Loire Valley, struggling to rally support for his cause. It was into this tumultuous political landscape that Joan first stepped in 1428 at the age of just 16. Convinced that God had chosen her to save France, she travelled to the Dauphin's court at Chinon and requested an audience. Though initially skeptical, Charles was eventually won over by Joan's piety and conviction, as well as her uncanny knowledge of a private prayer he had made. He agreed to give her a horse, armour, and a small contingent of soldiers to accompany her to the besieged city of Orléans. What followed was a series of stunning military victories that would alter the course of the war and cement Joan's status as a hero of France. Clad in white armour and wielding a banner bearing the names of Jesus and Mary, she led the French forces in a daring assault on the English fortifications surrounding Orléans. Against all odds, they succeeded in driving back the enemy and lifting the siege, a momentous turning point in the conflict. News of Joan's triumph at Orléans spread like wildfire throughout France, galvanizing support for the Dauphin's cause. Over the next year, she would go on to lead the French to further victories, recapturing key towns and fortresses along the Loire Valley. Her crowning achievement came in July 1429, when she stood beside Charles VII at his coronation in the Cathedral of Reims, fulfilling her divine mission to see him crowned as the rightful King of France. But despite these successes, Joan's story would ultimately take a tragic turn. In May 1430, during a skirmish with Burgundian forces outside the town of Compiègne, she was thrown from her horse and captured by the enemy. The Burgundians handed her over to their English allies, who saw her as a dangerous heretic and a threat to their own claims to the French throne. Joan was put on trial by an ecclesiastical court in the city of Rouen, charged with witchcraft, heresy, and dressing in men's clothing. The trial, which lasted several months, was a farce from the outset, with the judges determined to find Joan guilty regardless of the evidence. Despite her consistent and unwavering defense of her actions as divinely inspired, she was eventually condemned as a heretic and sentenced to death. On May 30th, 1431, at the age of just 19, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in the old market square of Rouen, her ashes scattered in the Seine River. But even in death, Joan's legacy endured. In the years that followed, as the tide of the war began to turn in France's favor, she came to be seen as a national martyr and a symbol of French resistance against foreign occupation. In 1456, a posthumous retrial ordered by Pope Calixtus III overturned the original verdict, declaring Joan an innocent victim of a corrupt political prosecution. And in 1920, nearly 5 centuries after her death, she was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. Today, St. Joan of Arc is celebrated not only as a military hero and a martyr for her faith, but also as a feminist icon, a young woman who defied the patriarchal norms of her time to forge her own path and make her mark on history. Her story continues to inspire people around the world, a testament to the enduring power of courage, conviction, and the indomitable human spirit. As we move on from the tale of Joan of Arc, we turn now to another remarkable woman who left an indelible mark on the medieval world, albeit in a very different way. 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐩 was an English Christian mystic and author who lived in the early 15th century, roughly contemporary with Joan. But while Joan's life was cut tragically short, Marjorie's was long and eventful, spanning some 7 decades and leaving behind a unique literary legacy. Born around 1373 into a wealthy merchant family in the port town of King's Lynn, Norfolk, Marjorie was, by all accounts, a precocious and strong-willed child. At the age of 20, she married a local man named John Kemp and went on to bear 14 children, though only one survived to adulthood. It was during this period of domestic life that Marjorie first began to experience the vivid spiritual visions that would come to define her adult life. According to her own account, these visions often took the form of conversations with Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and various saints and angels. Marjorie describes being transported to biblical scenes, like the Nativity and the Crucifixion, where she would weep and wail uncontrollably, overcome with emotion. She also recounts physical sensations, like the taste of Christ's blood in her mouth and the feeling of his body pressed against hers. While such experiences were not unheard of among female mystics of the time, what set Marjorie apart was her determination to share her visions with the wider world. In an era when most women were expected to remain silent and subservient, she embarked on a series of pilgrimages to holy sites across Europe, from Rome and Jerusalem to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. Everywhere she went, she preached her message of divine love and redemption, often to the consternation of local authorities. Marjorie's unorthodox behavior and outspoken views soon brought her into conflict with the church. She was accused of heresy on multiple occasions and even brought before an ecclesiastical court in the city of York. But each time, she managed to defend herself and avoid serious punishment, thanks in part to her quick wit and her ability to cite scripture and church doctrine in her own defense. Perhaps Marjorie's most enduring legacy, however, is the book that bears her name, the Book of 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐩. Dictated to a scribe in the 1430s, when Marjorie was in her 60s, the book is often considered the first autobiography in the English language. In it, she recounts her life story in vivid detail, from her early struggles with depression and temptation to her later years as a respected mystic and pilgrim. But the Book of 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐩 is more than just a personal memoir. It is also a fascinating window into the religious and social world of late medieval England. a time of great upheaval and change. Through Marjorie's eyes, we see the tensions and contradictions of a society grappling with questions of faith, gender, and authority. We witness the power of the church to shape and control people's lives, but also the ways in which individuals like Marjorie could challenge and subvert those norms. In many ways, Marjorie Kemp was a woman ahead of her time. Her unapologetic self-expression, her defiance of gender roles, and her insistence on the value of her own spiritual experiences all mark her as a pioneering figure in the history of women's writing and religious thought. While she may not have wielded the same kind of political or military power as some of the other women we've discussed, her influence was no less profound or far-reaching. As we continue our journey through the lives of medieval Europe's most remarkable women, we turn now to another figure who left an indelible mark on the world of arts and letters, Christine de Pizan. Born in Venice in 1364, Christine was the daughter of a prominent astrologer and scholar who served at the court of King Charles V of France. Thanks to her father's influence and her own precocious intellect, Christine received an unusually thorough education for a woman of her time, studying subjects like Latin, rhetoric, and moral philosophy. But Christine's life took a tragic turn when, at the age of 25, she was widowed and left to support herself and her 3 young children. In an era when most women had few options beyond marriage or the convent, Christine turned to writing as a means of both creative expression and financial survival. Over the next 3 decades, she would produce an astonishing body of work, including poetry, prose, and polemic, that established her as one of the most important literary voices of her generation. Perhaps Christine's most famous work is The Book of the City of Ladies, a prose treatise published in 1405. The book takes the form of an allegorical dream vision in which Christine is visited by 3 personified virtues: reason, rectitude, and justice. Together, they guide her in the construction of a metaphorical city populated entirely by women of virtue and accomplishment. From ancient goddesses and biblical heroines to contemporary queens and scholars. Through this conceit, Christine mounts a powerful defense of women against the misogynistic attitudes and assumptions of her time. She argues that women are not inherently inferior to men, but rather have been systematically denied the education and opportunities that would allow them to reach their full potential. She also celebrates the many ways in which women have contributed to society throughout history, from the domestic sphere to the realms of politics, art, and religion. The Book of the City of Ladies was a groundbreaking work in its time, challenging the prevailing view of women as weak, irrational, and morally suspect. It inspired a new generation of female writers and thinkers, and helped to lay the groundwork for the emerging tradition of feminist literature in Europe. Today, it is recognized as a masterpiece of medieval prose and a key text in the history of women's rights and gender equality. But Christine's influence extended far beyond the pages of her books. As a woman who supported herself and her family through her own literary talents, she was a trailblazer in the world of professional writing. She cultivated a wide network of patrons and supporters, including members of the French royal family and the powerful Dukes of Burgundy. Her works were widely read and admired, and she was recognized as a leading intellectual and moral authority in her own lifetime. Christine's legacy also extends to the world of art and manuscript illumination. Many of her works were beautifully illustrated by some of the most talented artists of the day, and she played an active role in the design and production of these manuscripts. Her attention to visual detail and her use of allegorical imagery helped to set a new standard for the illustrated book in the late Middle Ages. As we move on from the story of Christine de Pizan, we come to our final figure in this survey of medieval Europe's most remarkable women, Hildegard of Bingen. Born in 1098 in the German region of Rhineland, Hildegard was a Benedictine abbess, writer, composer, and visionary whose wide-ranging intellectual and artistic achievements made her one of the most important cultural figures of the 12th century. Like many of the women we've discussed, Hildegard's early life was marked by a powerful sense of spiritual calling. From a young age, she experienced vivid visions and prophetic dreams, which she interpreted as direct communications from God. At the age of 8, she was sent to live in a Benedictine monastery where she received a thorough education in Latin, scripture, and the natural sciences. As Hildegard grew older, her visions became more frequent and intense. She describes them as radiant streams of light that would pierce her brain, heart, and breast, filling her with a divine understanding of the world and its workings. In 1141, at the age of 42, she received a powerful vision in which God commanded her to write down everything she had seen and heard. This divine mandate would launch Hildegard on a prolific career as a writer, composer, and religious leader. Over the next 4 decades, Hildegard would produce an astonishing body of work that spanned multiple genres and disciplines. Her 3 major visionary works, Scivias, Liber Vitae Meritorum, and Liber Divinorum Operum, offer a sweeping cosmological and theological vision of the universe, from the creation of the world to the end of days. Her musical compositions, which include over 70 chants and hymns, are recognized as some of the most beautiful and innovative of the medieval period. But Hildegard's interests and achievements extended far beyond the realm of religion and the arts. She was also a keen observer of the natural world, and her writings on subjects like botany, zoology, and medicine reflect a deep understanding of the physical universe. Her Physica and 𝐝𝐭𝐧 𝐸𝐴 are among the earliest surviving works of natural science written by a woman, and they offer fascinating insights into medieval understandings of the human body and its relationship to the environment. Hildegard was also a powerful religious leader and reformer, who used her position as abbess to challenge corruption and advocate for greater spiritual purity within the church. She founded 2 new monasteries and undertook 4 preaching tours throughout Germany, attracting large crowds and earning a reputation as a wise and holy woman. Her letters to popes, emperors, and other influential figures reveal a confident and authoritative voice, unafraid to speak truth to power. In many ways, Hildegard of Bingen represents the pinnacle of medieval women's intellectual and creative achievement. Her wide-ranging interests, her innovative spirit, and her unwavering commitment to her spiritual calling mark her as a true Renaissance woman, centuries before the term was coined. Today, she is recognized not only as a saint and a visionary, but as a pioneering figure in fields as diverse as music, medicine, and natural science. As we come to the end of our survey of medieval Europe's most remarkable women, it's worth reflecting on the many ways in which their lives and legacies continue to resonate with us today. From the political acumen of Eleanor of Aquitaine to the spiritual insights of Marjorie Kempe, from the literary genius of Christine de Pizan to the scientific curiosity of Hildegard of Bingen, these women defied the constraints and expectations of their time to make their mark on history. Their stories remind us that even in an age defined by patriarchy and religious orthodoxy, women found ways to assert their agency, pursue their passions, and shape the world around them. They challenge us to look beyond the narrow stereotypes and assumptions that have often dominated our understanding of the medieval period, and to recognize the rich complexity and diversity of women's experiences throughout history. Of course, it's important to acknowledge that these women were in many ways exceptional figures, blessed with unusual talents, opportunities, and privileges that set them apart from the vast majority of their female contemporaries. For every Eleanor of Aquitaine or Christine de Pizan, there were countless women whose lives were defined by hard labor, poverty, and oppression, and whose stories have been lost to history. But even so, the examples set by these remarkable women continue to inspire and empower us today. They remind us of the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity, to challenge injustice, and to strive for a better world. They encourage us to look beyond the limitations and expectations that society places on us, and to pursue our own unique paths to fulfillment and meaning. As we reflect on the lives and legacies of these medieval women, let us also remember the countless other women throughout history who have fought for their rights, their dignity, and their place in the world. From the suffragettes of the 19th and early 20th centuries to the feminist activists of today, women have always been at the forefront of the struggle for social, political, and economic justice. Their stories may not always be as well known or celebrated as those of the women we've discussed today, but they are no less important or inspiring. They remind us that the fight for gender equality is an ongoing one, and that each of us has a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world for all. As we come to the end of our journey through the lives of medieval Europe's most influential women, let us carry their stories and their examples with us as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of our own time. Let us honor their memory by continuing to work for a world in which every woman has the chance to reach her full potential, to pursue her dreams, and to leave her own unique mark on history. And let us never forget the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest obstacles, to defy the most entrenched norms and expectations, and to create a better, brighter future for all. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating exploration of some of history's most remarkable women. May their stories continue to inspire and guide us all. The political turmoil of Matilda's time was not unique in the Middle Ages. Throughout this period, many royal women found themselves embroiled in conflicts over claims to thrones and influence over kings. Yet even in these tumultuous times, some managed to become formidable powers behind the throne. One such woman was Catherine of Siena, a 14th century Italian mystic and activist. Born into a large working-class family, Catherine defied expectations from a young age. At only 6 years old, she had a vision of Christ that would set the course for her life as a spiritual leader. Catherine dedicated herself to a life of prayer, fasting, and service, taking vows as a Dominican laywoman. But Catherine was no cloistered nun. Despite her humble origins and lack of formal education, she became a renowned figure in the Catholic Church, corresponding with popes and kings. When the papacy was briefly relocated to Avignon, France, Catherine campaigned tirelessly for its return to Rome. She even traveled to Avignon herself to persuade Pope Gregory XI in person. Largely due to her influence, Gregory finally agreed to restore the papal seat to Rome in 1377. Catherine's hundreds of surviving letters reveal her passionate and uncompromising character. She scolded bishops and nobles for corruption and vice, while offering counsel and support to common people in their spiritual struggles. A laywoman lecturing princes of the church was a shocking breach of social protocol, but Catherine's piety and force of will earned her grudging respect. The Pope even invited her to be an advisor at the papal court. Among Catherine's chief causes was advocating for reform in the church and campaigning for a crusade to the Holy Land. She envisioned the crusade as a way to unite squabbling European rulers and heal the growing rift between the Catholic and Orthodox churches. Though this dream never came to pass in her lifetime, Catherine never stopped exhorting leaders to put aside their differences for the greater good of Christendom. Catherine's writings also reveal a rich inner world shaped by her mystical experiences. She reported ecstatic visions, vivid encounters with Christ, and often went into prayerful trances for hours or days at a time. Yet she was no wide-eyed zealot. Her book, The Dialogue, lays out a profound theology of God's love and humanity's spiritual journey, revealing a brilliant philosophical mind behind the mystic. Worn out by her constant travels, political struggles and severe fasting, Catherine died at only 33 years old, but her legacy would long outlive her. In 1461, Pope Pius II canonized her as a saint, and in 1970, she became one of the first women declared a Doctor of the Church, honoured for her major contributions to Catholic theology and teachings. Catherine of Siena's life is a testament to the power of sheer determination. A woman from the humblest background, with no special education or resources, she nonetheless shaped the political and spiritual landscape of her time through the force of her personality and convictions. Humble in origin, but mighty in influence, she embodies the paradoxes and possibilities for women in the medieval world. While Catherine's world centred on the church, other women made their mark in secular spheres of the arts and learning. By the late Middle Ages, a lucky few noblewomen received education in Latin, literature, history, and languages. Some used this learning to become generous artistic patrons, like 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻, Countess of Artois in 13th century France. A daughter of the Count of Artois, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 inherited the county after her father died in battle. This made her one of the few women of her time ruling in her own right as a femme sole, rather than through a husband. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 proved to be an avid art collector, amassing a vast collection of paintings, sculptures, tapestries, and precious objects. She hired leading artists to decorate her castles and chapels with frescoes, stained glass, and altarpieces. Her luxurious tastes even drew criticism from those who felt such splendor was frivolous or indecent for a noblewoman. But 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻's artistic commissions were also savvy political moves, projecting an image of wealth and sophistication. Her most ambitious project was a sumptuous park and palace complex at Hesdin in northern France. Here, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 created an oasis of beauty and leisure, with lush gardens, fountains, aviaries, and a menagerie of exotic animals. The palace contained a great hall lavishly decorated with murals and sculpture. It even featured ingenious mechanical devices that sprayed water or made artificial birdsong to delight guests. Hesdin represented the height of Gothic style and became a model for other aristocratic residences. By all accounts, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 herself was a gracious and sophisticated hostess, welcoming fellow nobles and royal visitors to her magnificent estate. As one of the premier art patrons of her day, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 helped define the courtly aesthetic of the age. She used her wealth and influence to surround herself with beauty, elevating the cultural tastes of the time. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 was also a savvy businesswoman, carefully managing her estates and accounts. She commissioned a cartularie, or collection of legal documents, to help secure her property rights and claims. It was rare for a medieval woman to be so intimately involved in administration, and suggests 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 had an unusual head for figures and law. But even a woman as capable as 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 was not immune to the political intrigues of the time. Her county of Artois was a strategically important region, and 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 spent years battling her nephew Robert over claims to the territory. Robert alleged that as a male heir, he had a stronger claim than 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻. The French crown at first supported 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻, but later flip-flopped to back Robert's claims. These bitter inheritance disputes, with their twists and turns, underscore the precarious position of even elite women. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 had the wealth and competence to rule in her own right. But as a woman, her grip on power was always tenuous, subject to challenge by male rivals and shifting political winds. For all her artistic and cultural sophistication, she could not entirely escape the constraints of her sex in a patriarchal society. Still, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻 stands as an inspiring example of a woman making the most of the opportunities afforded to her. Through her discerning eye and bold artistic vision, she left a beautiful and enduring mark upon the world, one that would influence aristocratic fashions for generations. She reminds us that even in eras of constraint, determined women found ways to exercise agency and creativity, broadening the boundaries of what was possible. The women we've explored so far, Matilda, Catherine, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻, were all born to privilege, with social status that allowed them to defy convention up to a point. Other women had to rely on their wits and will alone to make their voices heard. Such was the case with Marguerite Porete, a French mystic and writer who dared to challenge the spiritual authorities of her day. Little is known for certain about Marguerite's early life, not even her real name. Porete simply means the little one. She first appears in the historical record around 1296 in the Diocese of Cambrai in northern France. Marguerite was a béguine, a type of devout laywoman who lived in a semi-monastic community but did not take formal vows. The béguine lifestyle offered an alternative for women who wished to dedicate themselves to spiritual pursuits, but did not want to enter restrictive convents. Marguerite's one surviving work is a mystical book called The Mirror of Simple Souls. In it, she lays out a daring vision of the soul's ascent to oneness with God, a state she calls annihilation. Marguerite describes a spiritual journey of letting go of self-will and earthly attachments, even letting go of the need for virtues or good works. For her, the only goal is total surrender to divine love. To modern readers, these ideas may sound more like Buddhism or Sufism than Orthodox Christianity. Indeed, Marguerite's radical rejection of hierarchy and ritual was centuries ahead of its time. She saw the established church, with its emphasis on priests and sacraments, as a hindrance rather than a help to spiritual growth. Her goal was unmediated union with the divine, a deeply personal journey of transformation. Unsurprisingly, such unconventional views raised eyebrows among church authorities. Marguerite's bishop ordered her to stop disseminating her book, deeming it heretical. But Marguerite continued to share her writings in secret, convinced of the value of her insights. Eventually, she was arrested by the Inquisition and put on trial for heresy. In a time when even most nuns were illiterate, a laywoman daring to write about theology was profoundly transgressive. Marguerite defended herself boldly at the trial, refusing to recant her views or accept the authority of the clerical court. She insisted that her revelations came directly from God and did not need the approval of priests, but her defiance sealed her fate. The court declared her a relapsed heretic and sentenced her to death. On June 1st, 1310, Marguerite Porete was burned at the stake in Paris, her book cast into the flames with her. It's a story that would be repeated again and again in the following centuries, as independent-minded mystics and religious reformers ran afoul of the Inquisition. Marguerite's heresy was to claim unmediated access to God, a radical equality of all souls that threatened clerical power. And yet, Marguerite's words would not die with her. Copies of her book survived and circulated in secret, even finding their way into other languages. The Mirror of Simple Souls inspired later mystics and religious freethinkers who also sought a more direct encounter with the divine. Marguerite's vision of self-emptying love, of total identification with God, would resurface in the Rhineland mystics, in the Theologia Germanica, and in Madame Guyon in the 17th century. Marguerite Porete's story is a haunting reminder of the price that could be paid for spiritual and intellectual independence in the Middle Ages, especially for women. Her crime was not only to think freely, but to express those thoughts without shame or apology. She dared to write in an era when women's voices were suppressed, claiming a place in the world of ideas. But Marguerite's story is also a testament to the enduring power of words and ideas to touch hearts across centuries. Her book, nearly destroyed, nonetheless found its way to those who were ready for its message. Marguerite herself was not silenced but transfigured, her mortal voice ascending like her simple soul to merge with the eternal. In the end, the fires meant to obliterate her only illuminated the truth and courage of her life, a light that continues to inspire seekers of wisdom and freedom to this day. As we've seen, women in the Middle Ages faced daunting obstacles to public influence and self-expression. For most, the domestic sphere was the only domain in which they could hope to exert some measure of agency. But even there, some extraordinary women managed to make an outsized impact on their world and the wider flow of history. One such woman was Jadwiga of Poland, a queen who used her position to profoundly shape the political and cultural landscape of Eastern Europe in the late 14th century. Jadwiga was born in 1373 to Louis the Great, King of Hungary and Poland. Betrothed as a child to Wilhelm Habsburg of Austria, Jadwiga seemed destined for a fairly conventional royal marriage. But fate had other plans for this intelligent and strong-willed princess. When Jadwiga's father died in 1382, the Polish nobility chose her as their monarch, contingent on her marriage to a prince who could help protect the kingdom's interests. They selected the pagan prince of Lithuania, Jogaila, who agreed to convert to Christianity in order to marry Jadwiga and secure the Polish crown. At only 12 years old, Jadwiga found herself in a position of immense political importance, key to an alliance that would shape the region for centuries. Despite her youth, Jadwiga proved to be an adept and formidable queen. She threw herself into learning, becoming fluent in multiple languages and studying a range of subjects with top scholars. She also took her role as a Christian monarch seriously, using her influence to spread the Catholic faith in Lithuania and beyond. Under her guidance, many pagan Lithuanians converted to Christianity, solidifying ties between the two realms. Jadwiga was known for her piety and generosity, with a particular concern for the poor and sick. She donated much of her wealth to charitable causes, founding a hospital in Buda and a college in Prague. She also made key contributions to Polish culture, helping establish a thriving community of scholars and artists at her court. But perhaps Jadwiga's most enduring legacy was her role in founding the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, the oldest university in Poland and one of the oldest in Europe. Jadwiga lobbied the Pope for years to get approval for the university, which would become a major centre of learning, attracting students and scholars from across the continent. The university's establishment helped spark a golden age of Polish science and culture. Jadwiga's marriage to Jogaila, while politically expedient, was by all accounts a loving one as well. The couple worked closely together to rule their kingdoms effectively. They had one daughter, Elizabeth Bonifacia, who sadly died in infancy. Jadwiga herself passed away in 1399 at only 25 years old, likely from complications of childbirth. Despite her short life, Jadwiga left an indelible mark on Polish history and culture. She helped broker one of the most important geopolitical alliances of the Middle Ages, linking Poland and Lithuania in a union that would last for centuries. She brought Christianity to pagan Lithuania, changing the religious landscape of the region. And she laid the foundations of Polish learning and art that would flourish long after her death. Jadwiga's story is a reminder that while women in the Middle Ages were often pawns in games of dynastic politics, they could also rise to become important players in their own right. Jadwiga seized the opportunity presented to her to become an influential queen and cultural patron. She shaped the world around her through her intelligence, generosity, and force of personality. In many ways, Jadwiga defies our stereotypes of medieval women as passive victims of oppression. She was an active agent in her own life and times, wielding power and leaving a legacy that endures to this day. Poles continue to honor her memory as a beloved national figure, with numerous churches and monuments dedicated to her throughout the country. Jadwiga's life also highlights the complex intersections of gender, politics, and religion in the medieval world. As a woman and a monarch, she had to navigate shifting alliances and expectations, balancing her roles as ruler, diplomat, and spiritual leader. Her marriage to a pagan prince for political reasons reflects the compromises and contradictions inherent in the system of feudal power. And yet, within those constraints, Jadwiga found ways to assert her own values and shape the world in her image. Through her patronage of learning and the arts, she helped create institutions and communities that would outlast any one political arrangement. She reminds us that even in the most patriarchal of times, women found ways to make their mark and leave a legacy of positive change. As we come to the end of our journey through the lives of remarkable medieval women, a few themes emerge. Again and again, we see women defying the limitations placed on their gender to make significant contributions to politics, religion, culture, and society. Whether as queens or mystics, writers or scholars, artists or activists, these women refuse to be constrained by the expectations of their time. We see the importance of education in empowering women to participate in public life and shape the world around them. From the abbess Hilda of Whitby to the poet Christine de Pizan, learning was key to women claiming a voice and a place in history. The rise of female monasticism in the Middle Ages played a vital role in providing opportunities for women's education and intellectual development. We also see the complex dance between gender and power that played out in the lives of medieval women. Those born to privilege, like Eleanor of Aquitaine or Jadwiga of Poland, had greater opportunities to exert influence. But they still had to navigate a treacherous landscape of shifting alliances, dynastic politics, and gendered expectations. Their power was never entirely secure, always subject to challenge or negotiation. For women of more humble origins, like Joan of Arc or Marguerite Porete, the path to influence was even more perilous. They had to rely on their own wits, charisma, and spiritual authority to make their voices heard. And as we've seen, the price of defying convention could be high, even fatal. These women's stories are a sobering reminder of the brutality of a society that saw outspoken women as a threat to be silenced. And yet, despite the odds stacked against them, the women we've encountered found ways to shape their world and leave a mark on history. They built institutions of learning like Hilda's Abbey at Whitby or Jadwiga's University in Krakow. They influenced the political and religious landscape through their counsel to kings and popes, like Catherine of Siena or Christine de Pizan. They expanded the boundaries of women's self-expression, like Marjorie Kempe dictating her visionary autobiography. Perhaps most importantly, these women served as trailblazers and role models for generations to come. Their stories remind us that in every age, there have been women who refused to be limited by their society's narrow view of what they could achieve. Through their courage, intelligence, and determination, they expanded the realm of possibility for all women. As we reflect on these remarkable lives, we may be struck by how relevant their struggles and triumphs feel today. Women around the world still face barriers to education, political participation, and self-expression. They still must navigate the complex intersections of gender, power. As we've seen, remarkable women were not content to sit on the sidelines of history during the Middle Ages. They challenged expectations, broke barriers, and made their voices heard in a world that often sought to silence them. Their stories continue to resonate and inspire us today. One such woman was Catherine of Siena, a 14th century Italian mystic and activist. Born into a large middle-class family, Catherine defied her parents' wishes for an ordinary life of marriage and motherhood. Instead, she devoted herself to prayer and service, becoming a member of the Dominican Third Order. But Catherine was no cloistered nun, removed from the concerns of the world. She embraced a public role as a peacemaker, preacher, and prolific writer, corresponding with popes, kings, and ordinary people alike. In an era when most women were denied a formal education, Catherine's spiritual wisdom and passionate calls for reform earned her a reputation as one of the most influential voices in Christendom. Her crowning achievement came in 1376, when she travelled to Avignon to convince Pope Gregory XI to return the papacy to Rome, thus ending nearly 70 years of exile. Imagine the scene, the humble young Dominican, fired by faith, boldly persuading the most powerful religious leader in Europe to upend the status quo. Through the sheer force of her personality and conviction, Catherine succeeded where scores of male clerics and rulers had failed. The Pope's return was a triumph, but Catherine's work was far from over. She continued to lobby tirelessly for peace and reform until her untimely death at age 33. Today, she is revered as a saint and doctor of the Church, one of a select few women to receive that prestigious title. Catherine's example reminds us that great moral courage could be found in even the least likely of places. Her story is mirrored by that of another woman of faith who left an indelible mark on history, Teresa of Avila. Born into a noble Spanish family in 1515, Teresa entered the Carmelite order as a young woman, seeking a life of contemplation and prayer. But she soon grew dissatisfied with the laxity and worldliness she found in many religious houses. Rather than despairing, Teresa took action, founding a new order devoted to poverty, seclusion, and strict observance of monastic rules. Her reforms met with fierce opposition from church authorities, who resisted any challenge to the established order. Undeterred, Teresa spent the next 20 years tirelessly founding and managing convents across Spain. Her magnetic personality and spiritual charisma attracted scores of young women to join her in a life of prayer and service. Like Catherine, Teresa was also a gifted writer, penning works of poetry, autobiography, and mystical theology that are still read and admired today. In an age when the Inquisition kept a close watch for any hint of heresy, Teresa's vivid accounts of her spiritual experiences were as brilliant as they were daring. Both Catherine and Teresa lived lives that were a testament to the power of an individual to change the world. They remind us that even in the most challenging circumstances, women of faith, creativity, and determination found ways to make their voices heard. Of course, not all women who left their mark on the Middle Ages were saints and mystics. Some were quite the opposite, carving a path to influence through cunning, ambition, and even violence. Perhaps no figure embodies this archetype more than the infamous Lucrezia Borgia. Born into the scandalous Borgia family in 1480, Lucrezia was the daughter of a pope and sister to the notorious Cesare Borgia. The family's reputation for corruption, incest, and murder has fascinated and appalled observers for centuries. Lucrezia herself was married off 3 times for political advantage, first at the tender age of 13. 2 of her marriages ended in annulment or murder, fueling rumours of her own involvement in the intrigue and violence that swirled around her family. But Lucrezia was more than a passive pawn in her family's machinations. She was a savvy political operator in her own right, serving as governor of Spoleto and deftly navigating the treacherous waters of Italian politics. In her later years, she emerged as a generous patron of the arts, presiding over a vibrant court at Ferrara. Despite the scandalous rumours that dogged her, Lucrezia managed to outlive her notorious male relatives and died a natural death at age 39. Her story reminds us that women, for good and for ill, were active participants in the power struggles and intrigues of their time. The women we've met in this documentary, saints and sinners, queens and mystics, writers and warriors, all left their mark on an era that is too often remembered as the domain of men alone. They challenge us to reconsider our assumptions about the roles and abilities of women in times past. But they also speak to us today, across the centuries, as examples of resilience, courage, and vision. In a world that still struggles with questions of gender roles and equality, these remarkable women of the Middle Ages offer both inspiration and challenge. They remind us of how far we've come and how far we have yet to go. As we conclude our journey through the lives of the most influential women in medieval history, we might do well to remember the words of Christine de Pizan, who wrote, "If it were customary to send little girls to school and teach them the same subjects as are taught to boys, they would learn just as fully and would understand the subtleties of all arts and sciences." In defying custom and expectation, in pursuing knowledge and influence in a world that often denied them both, these extraordinary women helped pave the way for the greater freedoms and opportunities that many women enjoy today. Their stories may be from long ago, but their legacy endures, inviting us to reflect on the timeless struggle for equality, justice, and the full flourishing of the human spirit. The remarkable stories of medieval women like Joan of Arc and Marjorie Kemp remind us that even in times when societal roles were rigidly defined, individuals could still defy expectations and conventions through the sheer force of their convictions and personalities. Joan of Arc's short but extraordinary life is a testament to the power of faith and self-belief. Born to humble beginnings in a small French village, Joan began experiencing powerful religious visions in her early teens. In these revelations, she claimed that the voices of saints urged her to help the French Dauphin Charles VII in his struggles against the invading English forces. Displaying remarkable confidence and charisma, the young peasant girl sought out an audience with the Dauphin and convinced him of her divine mandate. Equipped with armor and a banner bearing religious symbols, Joan led French troops into battle, rallying their spirits with her courage and conviction. Through Joan's leadership, the French saw several momentous victories, raising the siege of Orléans and opening the path for Charles VII's coronation. Her success on the battlefield and connection with the divine captured the public imagination, inspiring hope in the beleaguered French forces. However, Joan's defiance of traditional gender roles and claim to spiritual authority would ultimately lead to her downfall. Captured by the enemy Burgundians and handed over to the English, she was put on trial for heresy and witchcraft. The young woman faced her accusers with a steadfast defense of her visions and actions. Yet the court, threatened by her challenge to the established order, found her guilty. In 1431, at the age of just 19, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. Her story does not end there, however. In the years and centuries following her death, Joan came to be seen as a symbol of French national pride, a martyr unjustly persecuted by a foreign power. She was eventually vindicated, with a posthumous retrial overturning the original verdict, and the Catholic Church later canonizing her as a saint. Today, Joan of Arc endures as an icon of bravery, faith, and the struggle against oppression. Joan's defiance of societal norms finds echoes in the life of another remarkable 15th century woman, Marjorie Kemp. Born into a well-off family in the English town of King's Lynn, Marjorie initially seemed destined for a conventional existence as a wife and mother. However, a bout of illness following the birth of her first child spurred a profound spiritual awakening. Marjorie became convinced that she had been granted a unique and direct connection to God, experiencing intense visions of interacting with Christ and the Virgin Mary. These mystical episodes often manifested in vivid displays of emotion, with Marjorie weeping, writhing, or calling out during Mass and pilgrimages. Inspired by her visions, Marjorie embarked on a number of pilgrimages to holy sites like Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela. On her journeys and in her hometown, she took to preaching her spiritual message in public, an act that openly defied prohibitions against women teaching religion. Marjorie's unusual behavior and claims to divine inspiration attracted suspicion from religious authorities. She faced multiple accusations of heresy, including a trial in the presence of the Archbishop of York. Yet like Joan of Arc, Marjorie staunchly defended the truth of her spiritual experiences. Perhaps Marjorie Kempe's most enduring legacy stems from her role in medieval literature. At a time when few women outside of royal courts received any formal education, Marjorie decided to record her life story and visions. She dictated her spiritual autobiography to a scribe, preserving her experiences in what has become known as the Book of 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. As the oldest surviving autobiographical work in the English language, Marjorie's book offers a rare, first-hand account of a medieval woman's life and interior world. Her vivid descriptions of her spiritual visions, travels, and trials paint a fascinating portrait of both her individual psychology and the cultural forces she navigated. Through their unconventional lives and actions, women like Joan of Arc and Marjorie Kemper challenged the limitations placed on their gender in medieval society. They asserted their right to participate in the religious and public spheres, facing condemnation and persecution in the process. While Joan and Marjorie followed spiritual callings, other groundbreaking medieval women made their mark in the realm of arts and letters. One of the most brilliant and accomplished among them was the 12th century German Benedictine nun, Hildegard of Bingen. Born into a noble family, Hildegard was dedicated to the church at a young age. She joined a monastery, eventually rising to the role of abbess and founding her own abbey at Rupertsberg. It was in this cloistered religious life that Hildegard's prodigious intellect and visionary gifts flourished. Like some of her female contemporaries, Hildegard experienced intense spiritual visions from a young age. However, her visionary life was accompanied by poor physical health, with the abbess suffering from a mysterious ailment that frequently left her bedridden. Despite her physical frailty, Hildegard's mental and creative energies seemed inexhaustible. She pursued her visions and ideas with a passionate intensity, exploring subjects ranging from theology and philosophy to natural science and the arts. In an era when most scholarship was the domain of men, Hildegard composed extensive theological and philosophical works, expounding her spiritual visions. Uniquely, she wrote in the vernacular as well as Latin, making her ideas accessible to a wider audience. Hildegard's interests stretched far beyond the confines of religious doctrine. She made significant contributions to the scientific and medical understanding of her time, writing treatises on subjects like botany, zoology, and human physiology. Her text, Physica, or Natural History, detailed the medicinal properties of various plants, animals, and stones, providing one of the most comprehensive accounts of 12th century knowledge in the natural sciences. As a composer, Hildegard left a remarkable musical legacy. She wrote numerous hymns and sequences, her soaring melodies and rich lyrics, representing a flowering of sacred music in the 12th century. Her morality play Ordo Virtutum is regarded as one of the oldest surviving works of liturgical drama set to music. Hildegard's many accomplishments brought her fame and respect in her lifetime that transcended the typical gender constraints. She corresponded with popes, emperors, and kings, offering spiritual counsel and even admonishment. Her visions were shared with some of the highest religious authorities, who largely affirmed her divine inspiration. In Hildegard of Bingen, we see a brilliant and indomitable spirit who used her religious vocation as a platform to explore the breadths of human knowledge and experience. Her works in fields as diverse as theology, science, literature, and music show the incredible scope of her genius and curiosity. Hildegard's intellectual and artistic contributions have only grown in estimation in the centuries since her death. Today, she is recognized as a saint and doctor of the Church, one of only a few dozen individuals, and an even smaller number of women, to be honored with the title for their contributions to Catholic doctrine. The story of another trailblazing woman writer from the later Middle Ages reveals how shifting attitudes created new opportunities for women to participate in arts and letters, while still facing significant barriers and male resistance. Christine de Pizan, born in Venice in 1364, had the good fortune to be the daughter of a scholar employed at the court of King Charles V of France. Thanks to her father's enlightened views on female education, Christine received schooling usually reserved for sons of the nobility, learning languages, literature, history, and moral philosophy. This education would prove invaluable after a series of personal tragedies left Christine a young widow responsible for supporting her mother and 3 children. In an era when women had few options for making an independent living, Christine turned to the one field her studies had prepared her for: writing. Over the course of her career, Christine produced an astonishingly diverse body of work, encompassing poetry, prose, biographies, and allegories. She gained the patronage of powerful nobles like the Dukes of Burgundy and Orleans, her writings circulating among the courts of France and England. As Christine's literary reputation grew, so did her boldness in addressing the misogynistic attitudes and limitations placed on women in medieval society. The most famous example of this advocacy came in her work, The Book of the City of Ladies, written in response to a popular text that depicted women as inherently immoral and inferior to men. In The Book of the City of Ladies, Christine creates an allegorical city populated by great women from history and legend. Drawing on a wide range of sources, from pagan mythology to Christian hagiography, she celebrates the accomplishments and virtues of these female exemplars. Through this device, she presents a powerful counter-argument to the notion of women as weak or morally deficient. Christine's spirited defense of her gender extended to asserting the right of women to receive education and participate in intellectual life. Her works critique the lack of educational opportunities for women and argue for their equal capacity to learn and reason. As one of the earliest professional female writers in Europe, Christine de Pizan represented a new kind of literary voice. Her success in supporting herself and her family through her pen was a powerful statement of women's capabilities in a cultural and economic landscape dominated by men. Christine's legacy resonates not just in her own impressive body of work, but in the doors she opened for the women writers who would follow in her footsteps. Her example demonstrated that women could participate in the highest levels of literary culture, shaping public discourse and challenging entrenched gender prejudices. The exceptional women we've encountered in our journey through the Middle Ages, from Joan of Arc to Hildegard of Bingen to Christine de Pizan, each made their mark on history in unique and groundbreaking ways. They overcame immense barriers of culture, law, and custom to leave enduring legacies in fields as diverse as religion, politics, science, music, and literature. Yet as remarkable as these famous figures were, it's important to remember that they represent only a small sampling of the many women who shaped the medieval world. For every woman whose story has survived the centuries, countless others have been lost to history, their contributions and struggles largely forgotten. In the cloisters of monasteries and abbeys, unknown numbers of nuns and religious women lived lives of devotion, scholarship, and artistic creation. In bustling towns and quiet villages, female artisans and merchants practiced their trades and managed households. And in castles and courts, noblewomen and servants alike navigated complex social and political webs, their influence often hidden behind the scenes. Tracing the lives of medieval women requires looking beyond the traditional narratives that have long centered male experiences and achievements. It means reading between the lines of historical records, considering the silences and omissions, as well as what was documented. It requires a willingness to imagine the inner lives and motivations of women whose voices have been largely lost to time. As we've seen, women in the Middle Ages faced significant constraints and challenges. The patriarchal structures of medieval society limited their legal rights, excluded them from most positions of official power, and prescribed narrow roles centered on domestic and reproductive labor. Yet within and around these constraints, women found ways to carve out spaces of influence and self-expression. They shaped religious life as abbesses and mystics, wielded power as queens and regents, and made enduring contributions to arts and culture. Some, like the women we've profiled, openly defied or transcended the boundaries of their prescribed roles. Studying the lives of medieval women also requires grappling with difficult and uncomfortable aspects of history. Women in this era faced oppression and violence, from the legal subordination of coverture to the brutal punishments meted out to those who transgressed social and sexual norms. The inspiring accomplishments of the women we've discussed must be seen in the context of the immense barriers they had to overcome. Yet there is something deeply moving and resonant in the stories of women who, against all odds, found ways to make their voices heard and their presences felt. In their determination, creativity, and sheer force of will, they offer enduring examples of resilience and the unquenchable human spirit. As we reflect on the remarkable individuals profiled in this series, we're reminded of the importance of seeking out the hidden stories and unsung contributions of women throughout history. By bringing their experiences and perspectives to light, we gain a richer, more complete understanding of the past and the ways it continues to shape our present. The medieval women we've encountered also speak to the power of individual action and conviction in the face of even the most entrenched barriers and opposition. Their lives testify to the truth that a single person, fueled by passion and purpose, can defy expectations, challenge injustice, and leave a lasting mark on the world. So as we conclude our journey through the lives of some of the most influential women in medieval history, let us carry forward their stories and examples. Let us honor their struggles and triumphs by continuing to seek out and celebrate the contributions of women past and present. And let us draw inspiration from their courage and resolve as we work to build a world of greater opportunity, equality, and justice for all. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the extraordinary women who helped shape the medieval world. I hope their stories have illuminated the past in new ways, and perhaps even cast a light forward on the path ahead. There are so many more tales waiting to be told, so many more remarkable lives waiting to be discovered. The medieval writer Christine de Pizan, in the Book of the City of Ladies, imagines a grand city constructed to honor the great women of history. Stone by stone, story by story, may we continue building that city, expanding its avenues and raising its towers. May we people its streets with the voices and visions of women long ignored or forgotten. And may we invite others to walk its paths, learning and drawing inspiration from those who came before. As we close, I'll leave you with the words of another trailblazing medieval woman, the composer and mystic Hildegard of Bingen. In one of her soaring chants, Hildegard proclaims, "I reach into the depths of the wonders of God's works, and my soul rejoices." May the stories of the incredible women we've encountered ignite a similar sense of wonder, joy, and possibility. May they remind us of the depths of the human spirit and the boundless potential within each of us. Thank you, and good night. As we've seen, the Middle Ages were a time of great change and upheaval, marked by conflicts, plagues, and societal transformations. But amidst the turbulence, remarkable women found ways to defy expectations and make their mark on history. From queens and empresses to writers and mystics, these influential figures challenged the limitations placed on their gender and left enduring legacies that continue to inspire us today. One such woman was Christine de Pizan, a trailblazing French writer who lived in the late 14th and early 15th centuries. Born in Venice, Christine had the good fortune to be raised in the court of King Charles V of France, where her father served as the royal astrologer. This privileged upbringing granted Christine access to a top-notch education, a rarity for girls of her time. She took full advantage, immersing herself in languages, literature, and the sciences. But Christine's charmed life took a turn when she lost her husband at the young age of 25. Suddenly finding herself a widow with 3 children to support, Christine turned to writing as a means of survival. This was a daring move in an age when most female writers were cloistered nuns, writing anonymously or under male pseudonyms. But Christine's talent and determination quickly earned her the patronage of nobility, like the Dukes of Burgundy. Over the course of her prolific career, Christine penned over 40 works in a wide range of genres, from lyric poetry to military manuals. But she's best remembered today for her impassioned defenses of women against the misogynistic attitudes of her time. Works like The Book of the City of Ladies and The Treasure of the City of Ladies celebrated the accomplishments of great women throughout history and argued for women's right to education and a voice in society. In many ways, Christine de Pizan was a woman ahead of her time. She not only supported herself and her family through her writing, a remarkable feat for a medieval woman, but she also fostered a female literary tradition that would pave the way for generations of women writers to come. Through her outspoken advocacy for women's worth and capabilities, Christine challenged the deep-seated gender prejudices of her age and sowed the seeds of a more equal society. As a contemporary of Christine de Pizan, the German abbess Hildegard of Bingen also used her gifts as a writer and thinker to shape the world around her. Born over 2 centuries earlier in 1098, Hildegard was a true polymath, excelling in fields as diverse as theology, medicine, botany, and musical composition. From a young age, Hildegard was a deeply spiritual child prone to vivid religious visions. At the age of 8, her noble parents sent her to be raised in a Benedictine monastery, where she would eventually take vows as a nun. But even within the confines of religious life, Hildegard's brilliance shone through. She rose to become the abbess of her own monastery and attracted widespread fame as a visionary, healer, and prophet. Throughout her long life, Hildegard shared her wisdom through books, letters, and music. She wrote groundbreaking works of theology and natural science, meticulously cataloguing the medicinal properties of plants and animals. Her soaring musical compositions, written for the all-female choir of her abbey, are still performed today. And her mystical writings, which vividly recorded her spiritual visions, offered her unique insights into God and creation. Like many female intellectuals of her time, Hildegard faced opposition and even accusations of heresy from some church authorities. But her wisdom and piety ultimately earned her the respect of kings, popes, and common folk alike. She was widely sought out for her counsel on matters both spiritual and scientific, and her influence extended far beyond the walls of her monastery. Hildegard of Bingen's legacy is a testament to the incredible potential of the female mind, a potential that, all too often, was stifled or ignored in the Middle Ages. Through her diverse body of work and her uncompromising pursuit of knowledge, Hildegard helped blaze a trail for women in fields like science, medicine, and the arts. She reminds us that, even in an age that placed so many limits on women, brilliance and determination could still flourish. As we've journeyed through the lives of just a few of the remarkable women who shaped the medieval world, a powerful theme emerges, one of resilience, ingenuity, and quiet strength in the face of daunting odds. Women like Eleanor of Aquitaine, Joan of Arc, Marjorie Kempe, Christine de Pizan, and Hildegard of Bingen refused to be constrained by the rigid gender norms of their time. They marshaled their talents and seized what opportunities were available to them to change the course of history. Of course, the women we've profiled in this series are only the tip of the iceberg, a small sampling of the countless medieval women, famous and forgotten, who left their mark on the world. For every Eleanor of Aquitaine or Joan of Arc, whose story has been celebrated through the ages, there are thousands more whose names have been lost to time. Women who fought in battles, ruled kingdoms, wrote books, made scientific discoveries, and quietly subverted the limitations placed on their gender. Their stories remind us that women have always been active participants in shaping human history, even when their contributions have gone unrecognized or been erased from the record. They encourage us to dig deeper, to seek out the untold stories and unsung heroines who have too often been relegated to the footnotes of history books. And they inspire us to carry on their legacy of defying expectations and pushing boundaries in our own lives and in the world around us. So as we end our journey through the lives of some of the most influential women in medieval history, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep celebrating the incredible resilience and potential of women throughout the ages. The medieval world may seem remote to us now, but the lessons we can learn from the remarkable women who shaped it are as relevant as ever. By honoring their legacies and following in their footsteps, we can all play a part in building a more just and equal world for generations to come. As we reflect on the lives and legacies of these remarkable medieval women, it's clear that their stories have much to teach us about resilience, ambition, and the power of the human spirit. In a time when women were often relegated to the margins of society, these influential figures refused to be limited by the constraints placed upon them. They challenged conventions, defied expectations, and left an indelible mark on the world around them. Take Christine de Pizan, for example. As a young widow in the 15th century France, Christine found herself in a precarious position. With no husband to provide for her and her children, she could have easily slipped into poverty and obscurity. But instead, Christine turned to her love of learning and her gift for words. She began writing poetry and prose, eventually catching the attention of wealthy patrons like the Duke of Burgundy. Christine's works were groundbreaking in their unapologetic defense of women's capabilities and their scathing critiques of misogyny. In her most famous book, The Book of the City of Ladies, Christine crafted a vibrant allegorical city populated by great women from history and legend. Through this device, she argued passionately for the value of women's contributions to society and the importance of education for girls. At a time when few women were literate, let alone published authors, Christine de Pizan stood out as a trailblazer. Her works helped to foster a burgeoning female literary tradition and inspired generations of women writers to come. Today, she is remembered as one of the first women in Europe to make a living solely by her pen, a remarkable achievement in any era. Christine was far from the only medieval woman to make her mark through scholarship and the arts. Consider the life of Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century German Benedictine abbess. From a young age, Hildegard was a visionary in the most literal sense. She experienced vivid spiritual visions that she believed were messages from God. But rather than being dismissed as a heretic or a mad woman, Hildegard was respected as a prophet and a philosopher. Over the course of her long life, Hildegard produced an astonishing body of work that spanned multiple disciplines. She wrote extensively on theology and biblical interpretation, but she also made important contributions to the fields of natural science, medicine, and music. Her treatises on plants and animals were informed by keen observation and a deep appreciation for the intricacies of the natural world. And her soaring musical compositions, with their haunting melodies and complex harmonies, are still performed and admired today. Like so many of the women we've discussed, Hildegard of Bingen refused to be pigeonholed or limited by societal expectations. She was a true polymath with an insatiable curiosity and an unshakable faith in her own abilities. In a world that often discouraged women from pursuing knowledge, Hildegard's intellectual achievements were nothing short of extraordinary. Of course, not all influential medieval women made their mark through scholarship or the arts. Some, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, wielded power more directly through political maneuvering, strategic marriages, and sheer force of personality. Born into a noble family in what is now southwestern France, Eleanor was one of the wealthiest and most eligible women of the 12th century. She first married King Louis VII of France, but the union was an unhappy one. Eleanor chafed at the restrictions placed upon her, and she scandalized the court with her boldness and wit. After 15 years, the marriage was annulled on the grounds of consanguinity. But Eleanor was not content to retire quietly to a convent, as many noble women did after a failed marriage. Instead, she married Henry Plantagenet, the Duke of Normandy and future King of England. As Queen of England, Eleanor wielded significant power and influence. She served as regent when Henry was away, and she played a key role in governing their vast territories in France. Eleanor was also a great patron of the arts, particularly literature and poetry. She fostered a vibrant literary culture in her courts, and many of the greatest works of medieval romance were dedicated to her. The troubadour tradition of courtly love poetry flourished under her patronage, and she helped to popularize the ideals of chivalry and refined love that would shape European culture for centuries to come. But perhaps Eleanor's most enduring legacy was her role as a mother. She bore 8 children, including 2 future kings of England, Richard the Lionheart and John Lackland. Through them, Eleanor's bloodline would come to dominate European politics for generations. Eleanor's story reminds us that even in a patriarchal society, women could wield tremendous influence through their roles as wives, mothers, and patrons. Her life was a testament to the power of perseverance, adaptability, and sheer grit in the face of adversity. Of course, not all medieval women had the advantages of wealth and noble birth that Eleanor enjoyed, but even those from more humble backgrounds found ways to make their mark on history. Take Margery Kempe, for instance, a middle-class housewife from 15th century England who became one of the most famous Christian mystics of her day. Like Hildegard of Bingen, Margery experienced vivid spiritual visions from a young age. But unlike Hildegard, Margery was not a nun or a scholar. She was married with 14 children, and for much of her life, she struggled to reconcile her divine calling with her domestic duties. After experiencing a profound spiritual awakening in her early 40s, Margery embarked on a series of pilgrimages to holy sites across Europe and the Middle East. She claimed to have conversations with Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and she often wept and screamed during religious services, drawing both admiration and scorn from those around her. Margery's unorthodox behavior and her insistence on preaching publicly about her visions brought her into conflict with church authorities. She was accused of heresy and threatened with excommunication. But Margery remained steadfast in her faith, and she eventually dictated her life story to a scribe, creating what is now considered the first autobiography in the English language. Margery Kempe's story is a reminder that even ordinary women could challenge the status quo and leave a lasting impact on the world. Her experiences as a wife, mother, and mystic offer a rare glimpse into the inner lives of medieval women, their hopes, fears, and deepest longings. As we near the end of our journey through the lives of these remarkable women, it's worth reflecting on what their stories can teach us about the human experience more broadly. Each of these women faced tremendous obstacles and limitations, from societal expectations to personal tragedies to the brute realities of life in the Middle Ages. And yet, each of them found a way to transcend those limitations and make their mark on the world. Their stories are a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, to our capacity for resilience, creativity, and courage in the face of adversity. They remind us that no matter who we are or where we come from, we all have the potential to shape the world around us in meaningful ways. As we look back on the Middle Ages from our vantage point in the present, it's easy to focus on the ways in which women were oppressed and marginalized. And indeed, the obstacles that medieval women faced were formidable. But the lives of the women we've explored today offer a more nuanced and inspiring picture. They show us that even in the darkest of times, there have always been women who refused to be defined by the limitations placed upon them. Women who dared to dream bigger, to challenge the status quo, and to carve out a place for themselves in a world that often sought to exclude them. In the end, perhaps that is the most enduring legacy of these remarkable women. The way in which they expanded our understanding of what is possible, not just for women, but for all of us. They remind us that no matter the obstacles we face, no matter the limitations that society may place upon us, we all have the power to shape our own destinies. and leave a mark on the world that will endure long after we are gone. So as we close this chapter on the most influential women of the Middle Ages, let us carry their stories with us as a source of inspiration and hope. Let us remember that even in the darkest of times, there is always the possibility of light, the possibility of greatness, of courage, and of a life well lived. And let us strive, in our own ways, to be the kind of people who refuse to be limited by the expectations of others, the kind of people who dare to dream big, to challenge the status quo, and to make a difference in the world, just as these remarkable women did so many centuries ago. As we've seen, the Middle Ages were a time of great change and upheaval, marked by conflicts, plagues, and shifting political and religious landscapes. Yet amidst the turmoil, extraordinary women found ways to defy society's limitations and expectations, leaving their mark on history in remarkable ways. One such woman was Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century German Benedictine abbess, whose wide-ranging intellect and visionary spirituality made her one of the most fascinating figures of her age. Born into a noble family in 1098, Hildegard was dedicated to the church at a young age, entering a monastery at Disibodenberg as an oblate under the care of a devout anchoress named Jutta. From an early age, Hildegard experienced powerful spiritual visions that would shape the course of her life and work. As she grew older, Hildegard's visions became more frequent and intense. She described them as a living light that filled her mind and soul, revealing divine truths and cosmic secrets. Despite her initial reluctance, Hildegard eventually began to record and share her visions at the urging of her fellow nuns and the abbot of the monastery. Her first major work, Sivius, or Know the Ways, was a collection of 26 prophetic and apocalyptic visions that explored the relationship between God, humanity, and the created world. But Hildegard's interests and talents extended far beyond the realm of mystical theology. She was a true polymath, with a voracious intellectual curiosity that led her to write extensively on subjects as diverse as medicine, botany, music, and the natural sciences. Her medical texts, such as Physica and 𝐼𝐭𝐳 et Curae, drew on classical sources as well as her own observations to discuss the healing properties of plants, animals, and stones. She even invented her own language, the lingua ignota, and an alphabet to write it. As Hildegard's reputation grew, so did her influence within the church. In 1150, she founded her own monastery at Rupertsberg, where she served as abbess and continued to write, compose music, and correspond with popes, emperors, and other notable figures of her day. Her music, in particular, was renowned for its beauty and complexity, with soaring melodies and intricate harmonies that evoked the divine mysteries she contemplated in her visions. Despite the many challenges she faced as a woman in a male-dominated world, Hildegard refused to be silenced or sidelined. When some church authorities questioned her visions and teachings, she fiercely defended her experiences as genuine divine revelations. And when the male clergy attempted to limit her activities and movements, she used her aristocratic connections and force of personality to assert her independence and authority. In many ways, Hildegard of Bingen embodies the paradoxes and possibilities of the medieval world. On the one hand, she lived in a society that severely restricted women's roles and voices, confining them to narrow spheres of domesticity and religious devotion. Yet through her visions, her intellect, and her indomitable spirit, Hildegard transcended those limitations to become one of the most dynamic and influential figures of her age. Her legacy continues to resonate today, not only for her many scholarly and artistic achievements, but for the way she challenged and expanded our understanding of what medieval women could know, do, and be. In her writings and her life, Hildegard of Bingen invites us to contemplate the beauty and complexity of the divine creation, and to find within ourselves the same courage and creativity that animated her own remarkable journey. As we near the end of our exploration of influential women in medieval history, it's worth reflecting on the broader significance of their stories and accomplishments. These were not just exceptional individuals who happened to defy the odds and rise above their circumstances. They were also powerful reminders of the ways in which women have always found ways to shape the world around them, even in the face of tremendous obstacles and resistance. From the political intrigues of Eleanor of Aquitaine to the spiritual visions of Joan of Arc, from the literary innovations of Christine de Pizan to the scientific inquiries of Hildegard of Bingen, these women demonstrate the incredible diversity and resilience of the female experience in the Middle Ages. They remind us that even in a time of great oppression and limitation, women were not passive victims or silent observers, but active agents in their own lives and in the unfolding of history itself. Of course, it's important to acknowledge that these famous and celebrated figures were in many ways exceptional, enjoying privileges and opportunities that were not available to the vast majority of medieval women. For every queen or abbess or visionary mystic who left her mark on history, there were countless other women whose lives and labours went unrecorded and unremembered. But this only makes the accomplishments of these trailblazing women all the more remarkable, and their stories all the more valuable as sources of inspiration and insight for us today. They remind us that even in the darkest and most difficult of times, there are always those who will find a way to shine a light, to speak their truth, to create something beautiful and enduring. As we reflect on the lives and legacies of these incredible medieval women, we can also take a moment to consider the countless other women, famous and forgotten, who helped shape the medieval world in ways both large and small. From the anonymous poets and artists who created stunning works of beauty and devotion, to the countless mothers and daughters who worked tirelessly to keep their families and communities alive, these women too played a vital role in the complex tapestry of medieval life. Their stories may be lost to history, but their contributions live on in the world we inhabit today. A world that is in so many ways shaped by the dreams, the struggles, and the triumphs of the women who came before us. By remembering and honouring these remarkable figures from the distant past, we can also find new ways to celebrate and empower the women of our own time, and to work towards a future in which every person, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to fulfill their potential and leave their mark on the world. As we come to the end of our journey through the lives of some of the most influential women in medieval history, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the incredible resilience, creativity, and courage that these figures embodied. From the soaring cathedrals and illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages, to the enduring ideas and institutions that continue to shape our world today, the legacy of these remarkable women lives on, inspiring us to new heights of achievement and understanding. So the next time you find yourself marveling at a breathtaking work of medieval art, or pondering a profound question of philosophy or science, take a moment to remember the countless women whose tireless efforts and visionary insights helped make such wonders possible. And as you drift off to sleep, let their stories be a reminder of the power within each of us to shape our own destinies, and to leave the world a little brighter and more beautiful than we found it. As we've explored, Christine de Pizan and Hildegard of Bingen left indelible marks on medieval arts, letters, and learning. But they were far from the only women to patronize and contribute to cultural life in the Middle Ages. Another luminary was Marie de France, a 12th century poet who wrote in Anglo-Norman French. Though little is definitively known about her life, she was likely born in France and lived in England, perhaps in the court of King Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. Marie's most famous works are The Lay of Marie de France, 12 short narrative poems that blend Celtic, classical and contemporary themes of courtly love and chivalry. Lies like L'Enval, Chèvrefoil and Bisclavret are notable for their sympathetic portrayals of both male and female perspectives, explorations of complex human experiences and emotions beyond typical courtly romances of the time. Rare for the era, Marie's works prominently feature her own voice, directly addressing the reader. In the prologue to her lie, she asserts, "He who has received knowledge should reap the harvest of his wisdom. When such a one acquires learning, he should not be silent or secretive, but should demonstrate it willingly." With confidence and erudition, Marie helped establish vernacular French as a literary language to rival Latin, paving the way for later poets like Charles d'Orléans and Christine de Pizan herself. Marie was also notable as a medievalist ahead of her time. Her fables, a collection of 103 tales largely drawn from the ancient Aesopic tradition, are the earliest known translations of these stories into French. In her 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐲 Saint-Patrice, Marie produced one of the earliest recorded versions of the legend of St. Patrick's Purgatory. Her works represent some of the earliest efforts to collect, translate, and transform classical literature and folklore into vernacular French, endeavors that would come to define the Renaissance humanists centuries later. Though she may not have been a noblewoman herself, Marie de France clearly benefited from aristocratic patronage. Her works contain several dedications to noble patrons, including a noble king, assumed to be Henry II. As court poet in a royal household that included the likes of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Marie was at the epicenter of a revival of arts and learning in the 12th century. Her distinctly female voice and innovations in language, form, and theme make her a foundational figure in French literature. Our last medieval woman of influence was, fittingly, also a queen and patron of the arts, like Eleanor of Aquitaine. Jadwiga, crowned King of Poland to rule in her own right in 1384, ushered in a golden age for the Polish nation. Born in 1373 to Louis the Great, King of Hungary and Poland, and his wife Elizabeth of Bosnia, Jadwiga was destined for queenship from a young age. Intended to wed young William of Habsburg, she was instead elected by the Polish nobility to be their monarch, on condition that she marry Jogaila, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, to secure an alliance against the threat of the Teutonic Knights. Despite her arranged marriage, Jadwiga and Jogaila, who took the name Władysław II Jagiello upon his baptism and coronation, seem to have developed a close partnership. Together, they ruled over a period of stability and prosperity for Poland, strengthening ties with Lithuania, which would eventually lead to the creation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the 16th century. Jadwiga's wisdom and diplomacy were crucial in navigating the rival factions of Polish nobles and clergy, winning their loyalty and becoming a beloved sovereign. Like many of the influential women we've discussed, Jadwiga was renowned for her piety and intellectual pursuits. Deeply devout, she was involved in works of charity and the founding of churches, monasteries, and hospitals. But Jadwiga's most impactful legacy may be her role in the restoration of the Krakow Academy, the oldest university in Poland, founded in 1364, but moribund by the time of her reign. In 1397, Jadwiga bequeathed a large portion of her personal wealth to the school, funding the establishment of a theology faculty. Her endowment revitalized the university, which was renamed the Jagiellonian University in honor of the dynasty she and her husband founded. To this day, it remains one of the great centers of learning in Central Europe. Though her reign and life were tragically cut short by her death in childbirth in 1399, Jadwiga's impact was long remembered. Venerated as a saint soon after her death, she was finally canonized by the Catholic Church in 1997. For Poles, she remains a symbol of national identity and pride, a just and generous ruler who embodied the noblest ideals of a Christian monarch. From saintly mystics to scholars, poets to princesses, we've met an array of remarkable women who shaped the politics, culture, and religious life of the medieval world. Despite the constraints of a profoundly patriarchal society, these influential figures found ways to make their voices heard and their contributions felt. They ruled empires, wrote trailblazing works of literature, advanced education and the arts, and inspired new forms of spirituality and mysticism. In their own times and down through the centuries, they defied simplistic stereotypes of medieval womanhood as passive or powerless. Of course, the women we've explored are only a tiny fraction of the many who left their mark on the Middle Ages. For every Eleanor of Aquitaine or Joan of Arc, whose name has echoed through history, there are countless more whose stories have been lost or neglected. Women whose quiet lives of service, piety, and creativity upheld medieval families, communities, and institutions. Recent generations of scholars have worked to uncover their voices in the manuscripts, artworks, and artifacts they left behind, enriching our understanding of the complex lives of women in the medieval world. But perhaps the most important lesson is that the Middle Ages were not dark ages for women's agency and influence. Throughout the medieval millennium, we find women of all classes and callings who found ways to shape their societies as rulers and reformers, mystics and missionaries, poets and philosophers, patrons and producers. They remind us that even in eras of profound inequality, the power of women's voices and visions can never be completely silenced or suppressed. In a sense, then, this sweeping survey of medieval women's history is really just the beginning of the story. For every figure we've profiled, there are hundreds more whose fascinating lives and legacies await discovery. As we continue to recover their stories, we gain a richer and more complete understanding of the medieval world and women's essential roles in creating it. Bit by bit, a tapestry emerges of an age more complex and multifaceted than our inherited preconceptions, an era in which women of faith, courage, and vision could step forth to change the course of history. The influential women of the Middle Ages still speak to us today across the distances of time and culture. They offer enduring examples of resilience in the face of adversity, creativity in the midst of constraints, and the world-changing power of women's wisdom and agency. In learning their stories, we expand our sense of the possible, in their time and in our own. And now, the story ends. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Sleepy History channel. We've traversed the lives and legacies of the most influential women in medieval history, listening to voices that shaped faith, culture, and power across the centuries. Until our next journey together, rest well, dream sweetly, and remember, even in times of great limitation, wisdom, courage, and quiet determination can change the course of history. Good night.